So we have some, yep. Looks like somebody got Matt Buds for me.
So I got Matt Buds, but what should I do about Loretta?
She's got to call in. The instructions were in the original email I sent to everybody.
Okay.
I can't really remote in and help that because it's got to be a phone call.
All right.
734-241-1680 is Rob White. I'm going to be allowing to talk.
All right.
Rob.
Mayor,
Mute.
I don't have a copy of the agenda in front of me, but you're going to move through it anyway, right? There's nothing I'll have to read.
No, we just have the work session agenda and then other items as time permits.
Okay, because when I switched computers, I lost that. All right, so I should probably call Loretta Lapointe back real quick and then we can start.
Yeah, I'm working with Rob White, getting him going here.
I'm looking for the original message on my phone. I might be able to send to Loretta, but.
Mayor, I'm forwarding Loretta the email message right now.
Oh, okay, I'll disregard. Thank you.
Okay, Loretta's going to try it.
Rob, can you hear us?
Yes, this is Chief White.
Excellent.
Rob, it looks like you're joined twice. Are you on your computer and on your phone?
Yes, I am. I've got it muted though. I'm only using the phone for talking.
Michelle, was Loretta able to do anything?
She said she was going to call in. And she was working on figuring that out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
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 Okay, I'm all set then.
All right.
Hang on 1 second.
I know we may have others joining. Well, let's see, it's 6 o'clock. Wait till the clerk's ready to go and everybody.
I'm ready.
Okay, Mr. Pastor, you ready?
I am, Your Honor.
All right, it's 6 o'clock. Call the City Council work session meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Germaini,
Here.
Lamore,
Present.
Felder,
Here.
Whitman. Whitman,
You're muted. Yeah.
Here.
Aiko Angeli,
Here.
Vining,
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Present. As we go through the the agenda. The next item is the work session agenda and it's city council updates. I think we'll just go direct to Mr. Pastu. And I know you probably have an order for department heads to make presentations. Vince, please continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have kind of a PowerPoint presentation that Clerk Treasurer Lavoie will be sharing with us. And the point of it is just to give it some organization to go through what we really need to give council an update. There's been a lot of work taking place behind the scenes over the last month and a half. And I think as we've gotten more comfortable with these video meetings that I think we can go through and give the council a detailed update. But there's, I've got 9 different departments are going to talk and provide council with an update. And if we go to the next screen, I'll give you the lineup. Chief McCormick is going to speak first, Chief White second, and Barry Leroy will go third. And the rationale, these are the 24/7 operations. I wanted to start with them, and then as Barry goes through his, you'll also see the project and program updates will be a little more detailed. And then afterwards, it'll be a lot of project updates. And toward the end, we're going to talk a little bit about policy related items as it pertains to operations with special events and recreation. So, with that, if you don't mind, I would, if there's any questions from council, I'd like to start with Chief McCormick and giving his update.
Sounds good. Chief McCormick.
Thank you, Mayor and Vince. Charles McCormick, Chief of Police. Good to see everybody. I'd certainly like to start off by thanking the men and women of the Monroe Police Department. I knew we just had an outstanding team, but during these times, their professionalism and dedication has just been top notch, and I couldn't ask for a better of group of people to be working with. So certainly, and also to thank the citizens of Monroe. I think the numbers show that we've done a good job of doing what's needed to be and staying home and staying responsible. So, early on, what we took certainly several steps to basically keep what we needed as a ready workforce, to make sure we had a healthy group of people to respond to calls for service. We implemented several changes within our operating procedures to get there. One of those maybe more notable is an expediter position. We know there's ways that certain calls for service can be handled without a physical presence of an officer at the door. These are complaints that are not in progress, no suspects, private property accidents, maybe certain type of internet frauds, telephone frauds and the like. Again, just those types of calls that can be taken. The Sheriff's Department's had a similar model in place for years. So we knew that many of the residents would be familiar with that. So those people who call in with those type of complaints are routed by dispatch to that expediter for follow-up on them. We also did make a change with the medical response. We are still responding to choking, severe bleeding, CPR in progress, no breathing, or any time law enforcement is requested, we certainly arrive. But that has been a change for us in some regards. We're roughly about 1,000 calls less for service than we were this time last year. It can be a good thing on a lot of fronts, but that also obviously takes into note that certain proactive things, traffic stops, and not that they're not being done, but just at a different level than we were in normal operations. So. But just like council, we have goals and objectives that we want to make sure it happens this year, and so that those goals need to continue to move forward, and they are. One of the big projects is the Zerkers, our new RMS system. We are still moving forward with that project, and although it's been somewhat pushed back, but maybe a month or so, we're still looking to go live maybe at the end of August with that. So maybe about a month behind where we would have been. Which isn't too bad, all things considering. And the other major goal we have this year is our accreditation. That's a project we started in the summer of last year. We project for about 75% completed on our end, and this is through the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police. And once we complete our end, then we would have an on-site audit. We're looking at the end of this summer. I wanted to keep things somewhat short because I know we had a lot of presenters, but if there's any questions, I'm here now or certainly available for anything that comes up.
So, Mr. Pesto, I think since there are multiple presentations that if there's any upfront questions that council may have, I think we should do those as we move along. Might be something come up later. They want to get back with more than multiple department heads as well, but I'll just see if council has any questions for Chief McCormick at this time.
Your Honor.
Councilwoman Vining.
Hi, I don't have a question, and maybe this will be appropriate for the end, but since we have the chief and we are going live on YouTube, I've gotten quite a few calls about incidents in the neighborhood. I don't know if he wanted to speak directly to the people while we have this opportunity.
Sure. I know I had the opportunity to speak with Kelly, and I've heard obviously the comments at the last meeting regarding some of the shootings in the Precinct 3 South that we've had. No one's been injured during those, but certainly unsettling anytime, let alone during these times. Officers from Monroe Police Department, I actually should give a shout out to Officer Scott Pitcher, was off duty on Thursday late afternoon and observed one of the suspects that was wanted in those shootings at a establishment here in the city of Monroe. He called it in, and we were able to stop that vehicle. This suspect was an absconder from Washtenaw County, and after the traffic stop, a loaded handgun was found in the car as well. So that suspect's in custody, and it looks like he's going to be heading back to prison on with his parole status and facing additional charges. So the last shooting that occurred in the area there, we didn't have a whole lot of information on, but they are all active and ongoing. But we certainly, if people have information, to give us a call, 243-7500, and they could be routed to the Detective Bureau for any type of information they have on those.
Councilwoman, other questions at this time? I know that, well, I'll just ask if you do.
No, not right now. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Roy, I saw your hand up.
Yes, sir. Just have a quick question for Chief. Do we have cameras for the officers?
Yes, we have. We purchased in this fiscal year new mobile, which is in-car cameras and body cameras. The in-car cameras have been installed. We're working on putting out the body cameras. We're hoping to have those out within the next 30 days.
Cool. Great. Appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Other questions from council for Chief McCormick? Any things that might be you want to share that would be appropriate this time? Obviously, just with all department heads, whether sending things such as was brought up here recently, we'll make sure we get that information to any department head, police, fire, DPS, everybody, if there's circumstances we need to get addressed as we go along. And of course, Mr. Pastu is staying in contact with departments daily. So there's no other questions for John. Councilman McCormick, yes.
Thanks, Mayor. MAC is my understanding is that the police department isn't responding to all EMS calls as they were in the past. Would that be with the reduction in calls? You said there's like 1,000 less than last year. Is that just due to COVID, or is that due to not doing the response to non-police department related EMS calls?
Yeah, this was actually a conversation that was going on obviously well before, it was brought out in certain parts of the study, of our response to medical calls. We've always historically responded to priority ones medical calls. The biggest issue with priority one medical calls is the trouble with breathing status. So anytime a caller says, there's that criteria that dispatch is going to go through, and if one of those is, are you having trouble breathing? And they say yes, then that's an automatic priority one response. So what happens is the majority of calls seem to become priority ones, and we were going to those. So it was a discussion we were having prior to this, certainly sped things up, getting to where our response is now. Another issue was responding to medical facilities who have, at times nurses or doctors on staff. And then again, during this incident, with putting officers into places like assisted living centers and that for a call that's going to be readily handled by MCA and with the assistance of the fire department. It just wasn't necessary.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yep.
See if there's any other inquiries for the Chief McCormick at this time. Okay, I'm sure you'll be staying with us, Chief, but moving along, I don't have the front screen, but I did write down the first few. I think as I saw the list, next is Chief White from the fire department. Oh, there's the screen. Thank you. Chief White, can you hear us? And if you could.
I can hear you. I'm going to start by apologizing. We built a beautiful fire station, and I missed one thing. We didn't have cameras for Zoom meetings, but we're working on that. First of all, I want to thank the mayor and council as well as the city manager Vince Pastue for the leadership in this crazy, unprecedented time. I want to thank my staff. They have not missed a beat, and they've stepped up at every opportunity. So I definitely want to reach out to them and thank them for that, as well as you guys for your leadership. I feel Monroe has led the way, and I appreciate all the efforts from everybody to really kind of fall in place. As far as the fire department goes, things were pretty chaotic in the beginning. Guidances from the CDC and the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services were changing pretty much daily. That seems to have calmed down a little bit. We're still getting a lot of guidance, but it has calmed down, and we have a pretty good handle now on the directives. Now we're looking at what next steps could possibly be, and we're working with the health department on that. The next step is possibly testing and tracing of the COVID-19 disease, and we will be working with the health department when they're ready to move forward on that. MDHHS has basically done some prioritizing of the COVID-19 response, and it falls into three categories: priority 1, 2, and 3. Testing for healthcare falls under priority 3. Obviously, first responders, when they're ready for the priority 3 testing, we'll probably start doing some testing. Not sure what that's going to help us. Obviously, we're still using full PPE. As a whole, the fire department, we've been staying pretty healthy. Very early on, we instituted additional policies for PPE, for cleaning of the station, for disinfecting, and I really do believe that helped us through this whole COVID-19 thing. We were very proactive on that. We started as early as beginning of March. We instituted cleaning of the station 4 times. We're deconning equipment after every call. So I do believe that really helped us as far as staying pretty healthy as a whole. Currently, we have nobody out, and that's definitely a great thing. It's not much difference than how we normally respond. We always use universal precautions, and that's something that we do that's our business. Currently, we're in a pretty good position with our PPE as far as inventory goes. We're working closely with Mark Cochran and EMD to make sure that we have all of our equipment. I did just receive a text that we're probably going to be receiving more equipment from Region 2 South as early as tomorrow. The only one thing that we're having an issue with is surgical gowns. We use surgical gowns as more of a vapor barrier on scene, and we have replaced those with Tyvek suits. It's a little bit more cumbersome, but we found a solution to a problem, and we're working towards that. As far as calls for service go, I did check this morning. The numbers are about 1,200 calls so far this year. We're down a little bit from last year, about 20 calls, but we're actually up 10 calls from the year before, so there hasn't been much of a change, but it does seem like it is a little bit slower. We have run 74 COVID positive screen calls. What that is the central dispatch screens the call and takes information, and if it becomes a positive screen, then we're using full universal precautions anyway, so it didn't really change the response. We did have some issues in the beginning with follow-up testing results. We weren't getting any information, but that's been resolved, so we've kind of moved on from that. We are seeing an increase in the severity of calls. People they're afraid to call 911 because they don't want to go to the hospital. And so they're waiting to call. So we have seen kind of an uptick in like our priority 1 medicals. So we encourage people if they feel sick to call 911. But all in all, the city is doing a great job of staying home and staying safe. We are working on a few projects at the fire station. Currently, we're working on changing our run software from Firehouse to a full implementation of ImageTrend Suite for EMS and fire calls. We are working with Terry Davis on that to help define the data points and to give council, we're trying to work on giving council a good report. And I think that this is going to be a great move forward. We're also working with Central Dispatch, as Mac said, with Central Square. There's some changes that are coming. We're working through those and trying to get everything implemented. And both of those projects are keeping us pretty busy. We do have some challenges right now. Some of the challenges we have is obviously we do a lot of training, and training in this environment has become pretty difficult. What we're doing is probably looking at some, we do a lot of hands-on training in the fire department, and we're looking at going to maybe some online classes. But that doesn't, it doesn't replace the hands-on. So we're hoping that this thing kind of slows down a little bit. But, we're working through those problems, and we're hoping to find some pretty good classes online that we can send out to all the guys to help them, stay in touch with the equipment. That's pretty much it from my perspective. Unless you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I have a question and I can't see where I can wave my hand. Oh, yes, I do.
Okay.
Chief, do you have any kind of sanitation area so that you can, so all the guys can go get unexposed, or like Frenchtown did? Did you make an area in the station for that?
So we actually, with the new fire station, we do have a decon area. We've put some policies in place as to how we would approach that. If it comes in as a positive, obviously we approach it very, very cautiously. And, we have a shower, a decon shower out in the Apparatus Bay area. And then we would full decon all of the equipment. So yes, we do actually. We have a decon area.
And all the equipment as well?
Yep. We do that. We do that automatically on every call.
Okay.
We
good.
decon all of the equipment.
Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions from council? Councilman Moore.
Yes, Chief, just a quick question for you. I mean, have you changed any of your different type of duties now that COVID-19 is present, or are you pretty much doing the same thing?
As far as approach to calls, there's been a slight approach. It's a one in, one out approach. We're not sending two in. We've even kind of separated the two stations, the west side and the central station. We're trying to limit exposure as much as possible, so that if it did kind of get into the system, it wouldn't knock out a whole shift. So priority 3 medicals, we're approaching it a little bit more cautiously. Priority 1s, we still treat the same, but it's more of a one in, one out. So the guy might stand at the door and take information while the other guy goes in to take vitals. And then that guy is thoroughly deconned before he gets back into the truck. It's very cautious, very, very methodical approach to how we're responding now.
So you're still going to the same calls you were going to prior to COVID-19, correct? You're not changing.
Yes. With the exception of they've kind of tailed back on what they're calling a priority 3 non-symptomatic COVID-19. That's the only one that they've eliminated at this time, so that they're only sending the MCA units. But yeah, we've stayed pretty consistent. Like I said, this is what we do. Universal precautions are something that we've always practiced. N95 is new. We don't always wear N95, and we've also put goggles in the system so that, and then basically everything else, gloves, those are consistent with all calls. So.
Thank you. Appreciate the answer.
Okay. No problem.
Back, other questions from council? You answered my question earlier, and it was for both chiefs on the PPEs that you're staying with an inventory and finding solutions to other needs approach. So that's kind of what my question was. Sorry. Okay.
Let me feed the cat.
Yeah, I know. That's why I had to get up to try to get her out the door. Sorry, I appreciate it. I'm going to mute. Vince, next.
Yes, Your Honor, Barry Leroy, Water, Wastewater Utilities Director, going to give just a quick update. Some of the things have been going on at the water and wastewater plants, as well as field operations related to distribution and sanitary sewer collection. So Barry's put together a little PowerPoint, and so we'll use that as kind of a guide. So Barry?
Yep. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can, Barry, go ahead.
Excellent. Okay. So again, I want to thank all city staff and administration and mayor and council. I agree. Monroe is definitely leading the way, just based on a lot of the calls I'm getting from adjacent systems. All water and wastewater staff have not seen any symptoms of the coronavirus. We do have changes to all operations. We are using PPE for certain tasks, as well as I guess following all the protocol that's been established, cleaning facilities and things like that. As far as the water plant, usage is down about 20%, primarily driven by the industry being shuttered. We have noticed some signs of life, so to speak. That some larger users have started ramping back up, so that is a good sign. As far as the facility itself, it is operated 24/7. The plant operators are rotating on the regular shifts, so it's actually been for the straight shift people, the afternoons and midnights, it's been basically business as usual. They haven't really seen a change in their operations. We are able to do all our lab sampling and testing. Our mechanics are maintaining the water plant, our satellite facilities, the raw water station that is, and the South Custer booster station. There's been some minor repairs that they found that we had to do. So we are meeting all our regulatory compliance requirements. And now we're starting to do light maintenance like mowing grass and things like that, and cleaning the facilities. We had an emergency repair on our ozone storage tank at the plant. That's been resolved. We have not seen any issues with chemical deliveries, and we are moving forward with prepping for proposals and bids for next fiscal year when we get back to in the office. As far as water distribution goes, we've as far as what's on hold, and I know Patrick will talk about these a little bit, but our water main project's on hold. We're currently done with the design and permitting process, and we're moving forward with the bidding or pricing, that is. Also on hold is our new services and renewals, and any type of work that's related to getting into a home or facility. All of our large system projects, that's like leak detection, large meter testing and replacing, that's all on hold until the emergency order is lifted. We are maintaining our regular sampling, as well as doing some work order types, such as turn-ons and turn-offs. There's house sales and people moving and things like that, so that's ongoing. We have some statutory requirements with MISTIG tickets, that's ongoing. And there's been an increase that we've seen. There's a lot of home projects and other utility projects, so it seems like those have ramped up. But we are keeping doing our, or at least marking them all. We're also maintaining the system from a system flushing standpoint, and they've started at some specific requests where we have to restore some sites. As far as main breaks and service leaks, we've had those have been pretty minor. We've had 3 total since the state of emergency. And then the executive order 2020-28, that's the restoring of water service for occupied homes. That took a lot of research. We were able to pull together with staff from various divisions. We inspected about 261 field inspections as far as like verifying if it's a site is occupied, just doing a lot of field investigation. We left some notices so they could contact us to restore service. And then we found 45 locations that were turned on and are now active. There's a couple of them that we had to do some repairs to internally. On the May 4th agenda, council agenda that is, there'll be a grant recommendation to accept to help offset some of these costs that the Department of Eagle is handling, that we applied for. So that'll help lighten the burden on some of these excess costs. As far as the water office, we are maintaining our hours. We have changed our operations. We're splitting shifts and keeping social distancing requirements in hand. So we have like billing supervisors here. We're doing, we have our department aides covering the phones and handling all the reading and billing, waiving of convenience fees, handling final bills, things like that, as well as the general inquiries that go along with it. We had scheduled some new projects, so to speak, that we were planning to do, and we were able to complete them. One was going to the monthly billing, so that started and is ongoing now, as well as we changed our bill styles to what's called a pressure seal style. So that went out a few weeks ago. And we completed some delinquent bill liens that we had to go through. That we completed that task as well, which that typically takes several staff to handle, and we were able to get that accomplished. Lead and galvanized service lines. The lead and copper rule from 2018 required us to give notices by a certain date. So we're working through that. We'll be planning to send that out in May, as well as continue with those efforts. There's several water agreement type things going on. One is the city of Petersburg. We had a conference call Monday. We're working through some language items that we hope to get addressed to meet everybody's requirements. So that project can move forward for Petersburg, as well as ultimately establish the conditions. Exeter Township, Raisin Street Water Main Loop Agreement. That project is almost designed and we'll be moving forward with permitting. We've been busy with a lot of other requests in the township with a lot of private customers asking for like these exemptions that are allowed in our ordinance that I've been working with the township on. So we've been pretty busy with that during this time. The London Township project is still moving. It's approximately about half the size that it was before. We've worked through a study during this time with our consulting engineer to help us validate. There's no significant changes to the cost of service work that we did in 2019. And the Last and Water Office, I've been busy with also with the city of Toledo in Ohio. They're looking at alternative water source studies for us to possibly serve as part of their service area as part of the reliability study. And then now moving into wastewater, that facility is also be a 24/7 operation, and it is maintained as well on every shift with the operators there. Our sludge handling process with our screw press, that's required to be in operation as well, so as not to cause any significant problems at the facility. Our lab is still handling all the sampling and testing. And our satellite facilities are, as well as the plant, is being handled as far as maintenance goes with our mechanics. Ultimately, we're also meeting our regulatory compliance there. We also have Mystic tickets to mark, which our staff are handling. We have monthly checks on the collection system that are jetted if need be. That is ongoing and has not been a problem. We've been able to work around that to keep the system from backing up in different areas. Again, we haven't had the issues with deliveries or sludge hauling or landfilling operations. We're also moving forward with prepping for the 2021 work, as well as root treatment bids and also light maintenance. We did have a few significant issues with little incidents. We had a sewer collapse on the Navarre Street that we had to do an emergency repair during this state of emergency, as well as a Carrington lift station out there. We had a pump failure that we had to do an emergency replacement. One of our pumps in our settled waste treatment phase, a pump had to be replaced in emergency status there. So that was handled. And then our sludge mixing well had a couple of pumps. So we had a few pump issues that we had to deal with during this time. On hold, we have our corrective action plan work. That's working with our consultant and then our staff. That's on hold right now. And then we have a capital improvement project that we're in the middle of that we had to put on hold at our Sunset Pump Station and the Detroit Beach Station. So that's what I have for everybody as an update. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Don't
Any
forget the
questions from
Commission on the
council?
Environment.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Pastor.
I told Barry, don't forget the Commission on the Environment.
Oh, yes. I noticed that slide was not showing up, so I figured you wanted to pass that. But yeah, we're still meeting through Zoom on the Commission on Environment Water Quality, and council accepted a grant at the last council meeting, so we're moving forward with those tasks. We already had a Zoom call on that, and I got notice of a river cleanup grant that we've got an email that we will be receiving a small grant to fund that for 2020. So those are the items for the Commission on Environment. Vince.
Questions for Mr. Leroy?
Your Honor.
Yes, Councilman Vining.
Thank you. I was curious, we talked about turning the residential water services back on. Is there a plan? How is this going to work when the COVID situation lets up? How is this going to work? Are we developing a plan to be able to allow those homes to continue to have water service? I'm thinking of ones who were maybe turned off for non-payment. How would that work after this crisis?
We have not, I might just take a shot at it. We haven't had really any discussion related to, what we do afterwards. Again, the expectation is they're going to have to, pay for the service and probably more than likely follow a similar pattern as we have in the past, providing the notices. And regrettably, we shut the water off for non-payment, but
from a number standpoint, there's approximately, there was 45 total that fit into that category, not necessarily non-payment, because we have customers that have turned service off for various reasons, whether it's a summer home, whether they're doing repairs. So there's, or being renovated. But ultimately, there's probably less than 15 that fit into that category of the non-payment status.
Yeah, I heard Detroit had enacted a similar program, and I know they developed some caveat to the program that would allow the people to pay on their past due notices while paying the current bill. I don't know all the details though. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Other questions for Mr. Leroy? Okay, I don't see.
Your Honor, can I just add another item?
Please do.
Mr. Leroy alluded to the Petersburg water agreement, for their rural water or rural development grant and loan for their project. And we did have what I thought was a good progress yesterday. We had a couple of concerns, and Mr. Leroy, Mr. Buds, and I had a conference call with officials from Petersburg as well as rural development. So I think some progress is being made related to that. It may still be another month or wait before we come to council with it, but I do think it's we made good progress, and we're hopeful to bring that back to city council here maybe within a month or so.
Very good. Let's see if there's any other final comments or questions for Mr. Leroy. Okay, seeing none, I think we'll move on to the next.
Your Honor, I'll have Mr. Cochran provide update a number of items to go through here. So I'll let Mark take off from here.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, Mark Cochran, Assistant City Manager and Economic Development Coordinator. Pleasure to see you this evening, although I'm getting tired of staring at you through a little tiny dot at the top of my computer, and I look forward to when we can be back in City Hall together again. Just wanted to give you a few updates on some of the work that we've been working on. First and foremost, when you appointed city manager past due as the emergency management coordinator. He designated me as the emergency management liaison, which means I've been working a lot with Monroe County EMD, as well as a lot of our community partners and human service agencies on how to respond and provide city resources to the community response to the COVID-19 outbreak. So as Chief White mentioned, I've been handling all the resource requests coming through from the department, all the city departments for resources necessary for response, particularly for our emergency personnel and police, fire, as well as Berry staff and water and wastewater, and also some of the other departments who need resources. Primarily, we've been submitting resources or requests to EMD for things like gloves, the gowns that Chief White mentioned, hand sanitizer and sanitizer for cleaning the police cars, also the N95 masks and protective gear and PPE for our departments. The process works, we submit the request to Monroe County EMD and they submit it to the State Emergency Operations Center to tap into the Strategic National Stockpile supply that was delivered to the state. And then those items get delivered, if they're available, from the state to local EMD and then dispersed from the county EMD to the city. So we've submitted a total of 18 resource requests so far. Not all of them can be fulfilled, obviously. Chief White mentioned some of the problem with getting like the surgical gowns for their response, but I will say EMD has been done very well in trying to get the resources that we need. One other resource we've requested is for Clerk Lavoie for preparing for the upcoming election with sanitizer and gloves and masks for her personnel. And so been filtering and managing a lot of those. We've also been in communication with EMD about how we get reimbursed for some of our costs associated with the coronavirus response, things like overtime in either police or fire department. I know we did have some in the fire or police department for supporting the food distributions that the Opportunity Center and MCOP have been putting on to make sure that the flow goes well and that that the crowds are managed in accordance with CDC guidelines. So greatly appreciate their support. But working with Ed Sell, the finance director, on how we can submit reimbursement for those costs through EMD and FEMA, ultimately FEMA. And so I know Mr. Sell did set up our username, password, and requested access to the formal FEMA portal so that we can seek reimbursement when the time comes. Also, Jody Egan has done a tremendous job in getting information out to the public via press release, the press releases that have gone out, as well as social media, email, and the other means that we have available to us. And so providing support to Jody as well and trying to craft those messages and get those out. We've also worked, like I've mentioned before, with the Opportunity Center and the YMCA and some of our other community partners, the schools, the community college, to make sure that our residents are being taken care of. And managing and being able to meet needs when the needs arise. I think an example of that is the United Way reached out to us to look at, is there an opportunity to reopen some of our facilities, whether it's the Opportunity Center or the libraries, so that folks can go in and use the internet and use the computers to file for unemployment insurance. And so we worked with MCOP in the library system, knowing that the Wi-Fi service at the Navarre branch does reach into the parking lot. Folks can utilize the library Wi-Fi service at that facility right now. And then also in the process, working with Stephanie Kasperzak and MCOP at possibly opening up the Opportunity Center by appointment for folks to come in, while following CDC guidelines and protecting staff and making sure the facility is clean if folks need access to actually use a computer to file. And so been kind of coordinating that and working with our community partners on things such as that. So I guess The next thing that I wanted to talk about, obviously, you know, the emergency management component has been top priority, but the other work does continue, and necessarily so. So I know some of the other staff on tonight's call are going to talk about the progress on the Lazy Boy redevelopment. We've still been keeping that ball rolling, still holding our Lazy Boy steering committee meetings weekly. Still in conversation with the developer, even though we haven't been able to do the demolition per the governor's guidelines right now, making sure that we can try and keep that project on schedule. So I know Patrick is going to give an update on where we're at with the demolition. Not much to update there. It is on hold until construction is allowed to begin again. But I know his department has been keeping in contact with the contractor the city council awarded the bid to, which is Homrich. And then Patrick's also going to talk about the infrastructure, and Jeff's going to talk about the PUD plan review process, so that we can keep that moving ahead. But I'll say we've been working with AKT Peerless as well as the developer to put together our sales pitch, so to speak, to the state of Michigan for their support for the brownfield plan, so that we can capture the state education tax as part of the payback for the demolition of the structure. And so AKT Peerless, Mr. Daly from the developer and I had a call 2 weeks ago to go over the financial figures as we put together the pro forma for the state. And so we're looking forward to submitting that and hopefully having the state support for the brownfield plan that was approved, of course, by the Brownfield Authority as well as City Council earlier this year. One item that's worth updating you on as well, you know, we had secured a $1.5 million loan, $1.1 million loan from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the Downriver Community Conference to help fund the demolition. If you'll recall, originally the estimate was about $2.5 million to bring the site down. The bid actually came in at about $973,000. We were looking to use the DCC EPA loan primarily first and foremost for the demolition, and then the Brownfield Authority and the city would issue brownfield bonds to reimburse for the rest, which we were looking at about $1.5 million. We did encounter a bit of a challenge with the state of Michigan. Per the EPA loan, we had to do what's called a Section 106 review, which is submit the plans and the proposal to the State Historic Preservation Office at the MEDC to find out if they saw any adverse effect on a potential historic property. With the EPA loan, we contracted with the Downriver Community Conference with a consultant who did a review and made the determination to us that there was no historic significance to the site, that there was enough renovations done on the building itself and on the site itself that it didn't necessarily qualify as a site for the National Historic Register. We submitted all that information to the state of Michigan. They were supposed to have 30 days to respond. We couldn't move ahead with the US EPA loan until we had their response. 70 days later, they finally responded. They disagreed with our consultants' findings and thought that the site may be qualified for the National Historic Register. That potentially, they were only concerned about the original two-story structure, which again, we didn't agree with their findings. But if we would have had to go through the official memorandum of agreement process as required by the EPA loan, we would have had to negotiate an agreement with the EPA and the state, which could have delayed the project up to 6 months to a year until we negotiated something. So given the fact we have development on the hook that needs to be completed by the end of summer with the construction season, given the fact we had such good returns from the demolition RFP with Homrich being less than $1 million, and some of the other significant things that we need to accomplish this year, we've decided to forego the EPA loan, which removes us from that 106 review process, meaning that the city will fund the entire demolition, which again is less than what we were originally anticipated funding at about 1.5 million. So even though we aren't using the EPA loan, we're still gonna proceed with the demolition and then issue brownfield bonds for eventual reimbursement for that. So not much changes in terms of the brownfield plan, other than you know, the bonds may not have the favorable rates that the EPA loan did, but again, 2.5 million was the original estimate, and the final cost was 973,000. So wanted to make council aware of that we weren't proceeding with the EPA loan, and that the brownfield plan is going to be submitted to the state relatively soon for their approval. So I guess before I move on to other items, I would pause there and ask if there's any questions.
I was on mute. John, you have a question?
Yeah, Mayor. Mark, is the sources and uses of cash, and this is to Vince too, because of the low demolition costs, are they pretty much in line with what the presentation was when we started the project a few months ago?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, if I may, Your Honor, is just following up on that is, you know, when we were kind of going through this period, we did a quick net present value calculation, because there was some cost that would be removed as a result of not going through the EPA. And if I recall, it was somewhere in the 20,000 range. So, okay, do you lose a whole project season for 20,000 or go forward? We talked with the developer, and I think from a staff as well as developer standpoint, so let's just go forward. It wasn't worth, and even there's no guarantee. We could have still ended up spending more money afterwards. So we thought the more prudent action was just to go forward, and rather than go through a pretty detailed process.
And if I may, we do have a plan in place to recognize the significance of the site too. So while the state may have stood in the way from demolishing the whole site, we understand the significance of the 26 acres, the local community and the local economy. And we've got some plans with the development to make sure that that's recognized. And we've discussed that with Lazy Boy as well.
Thanks.
Other questions for Mark? Mark, I have a couple. I'll see if anybody else has after this, but I know I appreciate the movement forward on the submission on the brownfield plan, and obviously the importance of getting that capture in especially the circumstances of with the preservation office and the EPA loan not coming through. So first, thanks, that's going through, and hopefully that does, because I think if that doesn't come through, we have a whole different issue. If you just, I don't know if you want to speak to that or not.
Yeah, if we don't get state support with the brownfield plan, the plan itself lays out how long it's going to take for the city to be reimbursed for the demolition. If we have state support, obviously with the state chipping in and us being able to capture the state education tax, it'll reduce the amount of time that it's going to take to pay ourselves back by I think about 5 years. If we don't have state support, it's going to push that out even longer. I mean, the city will be made whole and we will be reimbursed for the costs. It's just going to severely impact how long it's going to take for us to get that reimbursement.
Thank you. The second part is I also appreciate the update on the timeline. Obviously, we did get a very good bid return on Homrich's bid for the demolition. Any concerns with the delay of time for them? I appreciate you said you were in contact with them, but is there any contractual agreement that we have, a time frame that we need to get started on demolition?
Yeah, I'll let Patrick speak to that in full, because they've been the ones conversing with Homrich, but I believe, the contract does lay out if there's reasons that the work can't proceed within, a certain time frame. There's stipulations in the agreement that Patrick can get into, but I know those have all been worked out, and I don't believe that there's going to be an increase in cost because of the delay that's outside of our control and outside of the contractor's control as well.
Thank you, Mark, and we'll see if Patrick has any further on that. Other questions from council for Mr. Cochran?
Hey, Mark's got a handful more items to go through. I think there's 11 in all, so.
We'll keep going then. Let's keep moving.
So the next thing I wanted to update you on, obviously, we've been in the middle of construction with the renovations at the former multi-sports complex for the National Park Education and Visitors Center. All of the interior work has come to a halt as a result of the executive order that has deemed construction non-essential. So the interior work has stopped. But however, the rain hasn't stopped, which means that we know the situation and the problems that we have with the roof at that facility. We reached a point recently where the rain was actually coming through the roof and starting to damage some of the work that had been done inside the facility as part of the renovations. And so we've been working with Jim Jacobs Architect to put together a bid package to go out to bid for the roof repairs. However, given the fact that the rain was getting in the building and starting to ruin the facility and some of the repairs, we did with the building authority and city moved ahead with emergency work to replace some of the caulk joints, and particularly around that skylight and the front lobby. That was necessary for emergency repair underneath the governor's orders. And so there has been some work going on, minimally necessary to protect the facility and the inside. Other than that, we're working with Jacobs Architect to put together a bid package to go out for the full roof repair. And as soon as things settle down a little bit, I know we'd like to get that out within the next 2 weeks or so, and try and see what responses we get. So we look forward to hopefully the work continuing on the inside with the renovations, and then making sure that the roof is repaired in a timely manner. Another facility that we've been working with Jacobs Architect on has been the Opportunity Center at the ALCC. I know we talked about this a little bit last week with some additional work as part of that, but finalizing the plans for the kitchen renovations, hopefully that'll go out soon as well. I know we talked with Jacobs Architect and they found another cost savings for us this week, which is positive news. So looking forward to that bid package hitting the streets relatively soon as well, so that that project that we've talked about for a couple of years can move ahead and that work gets started.
Very good.
The next item is related to the DNR Trust Fund grant and the FEMA grant. Obviously, real estate services right now are not deemed an essential service. Also, we received some guidance from the DNR originally that the governor had instituted a spending freeze on all discretionary funds, which put a halt to many of the DNR grant programs. However, because ours is a natural resources trust fund grant that is governed by funding through a separate board via the Michigan Constitution, we've been allowed to continue with that. So we've been working with one property owner in particular, and we've got a closing package developed to keep that project moving ahead, hopefully closing in the next couple of weeks, and then working with the emergency management department at the state that's administering our FEMA grant to get some appraisals approved so we can move ahead with those purchases straight away when the executive order is lifted too, so we can keep that project moving ahead. But again, negotiating and hopefully closing on one property within the next week or so, following all social distancing guidelines and the CDC guidelines to move ahead with that real estate transaction. It's both not only the city's purchase, but also the replacement house purchase for the tenant at that structure as well. We've also been meeting electronically with DTE over the past couple of weeks. Obviously, we're still moving ahead and planning for the Shun-Lee facility near the Port of Monroe. Those discussions have been ongoing, I know, as well. But part of that includes making sure that we've got electrical capacity to serve that customer. And these discussions have been going on for well over a year now. But having discussions with them about how we make sure there's capacity not only for Shun-Lee, but for future development, in particular the eastern portion of the city as well. And so we're in discussions about a potential substation construction And so we've been working with the Monroe County BDC and DTE on how we can upgrade and make those plans for future development as well. We've also been working with Monroe Township and the Monroe County BDC and OHM advisors and the county on a La Pleasance Road corridor plan. This work had been going on for a couple months before the quarantine hit, but we've continued to meet electronically with OHM, the BDC and the county on how we can maximize economic development potential on the La Pleasance corridor, connecting to the Port of Monroe and the east side of the city as well. So that project is moving ahead. Still in a lot of discussions and brainstorming, but wanted you to know that, economic development hasn't stopped just because of the quarantine. We've been moving ahead on these things. The Downriver Community Conference, I think Mr. Buds mentioned this at a meeting that we had in one of the more recent weeks, but unfortunately, Paula Bowes passed away, and she was the Brownfield director and the economic development director at the Downriver Community Conference. She was there since 1986, I believe, and had a lot of institutional memory and knowledge and good relationships with the EPA. It was because of her and her facilitation, working with, I know Congressman Dingell's office and the city of Monroe, that we were able to accomplish Mason Run redevelopment, Towns on Front redevelopment, the national park, as well as the wildlife refuge. And so she's going to be deeply missed and has been highly effective in bringing dollars not only to our region, but to Monroe County and the city of Monroe as well, and the Brownfield Authority. And so with her sudden passing, I've been working with Jim Wagner, the chair of the DCC Brownfield Consortium, and Jim Perry on how we can develop a continuity plan to make sure that that continues. We're waiting right now. We submit a multi-million-dollar grant to the EPA, and we're waiting to hear back. The city would receive a portion of that funds for assessment projects on some brownfield projects that we have in the pipeline going right now. And so it's very, very important for the city of Monroe and the Port and the Brownfield Authority to make sure that we can assist and provide any guidance to the DCC that we possibly can during this transition time, especially during this challenging time during the quarantine. Next, the Telegraph Road Corridor Improvement Authority. City Council approved the development agreement at our last regular meeting. So making sure that that moves ahead, and we'll look forward to scheduling an authority meeting as soon as the quarantine is lifted and we can meet again and start putting together an action plan. But I started to brainstorm and put some things down on paper that we can present some recommendations sooner rather than later too, particularly related to the Lazy Boy site. Finally, there's two items that the Monroe County Business Development Corporation has continued to work on. That's a quality of life and housing pillar team that myself and Annette Knowles are participants on. They're looking to do a countywide housing assessment similar to what the city has done in the past for market analysis. And so we met this week to take a look at that, a few proposals to select somebody to do that work. And, the leadership that the city had done in doing some of these studies and providing that guidance to the pillar team has been, I think, valuable to the BDC. And then Florence Buchanan is leading the County Bicycle and Pedestrian Task Force that's under the County Parks and Rec Department. And the goal of that is to develop a regional trail plan that connects not only Monroe County and the communities in the county, but also Toledo and Ohio to the south, and then downriver and the Bell Iron Trail to the north. And so we've continued to meet electronically. I haven't been able to participate in all of them, but the work is continuing through the quarantine, and I think that's important for people to know of. Finally, the last item that I wanted to talk about is our partnership with the Monroe County Business Development Corporation. We've been relying on them to provide a lot of guidance and resources to the small businesses in the city as a result of the quarantine and the shutdown, and how to tap into some of the relief funds that have been made available to the country. And so I wanted to just give a brief report from the BDC on work that's been ongoing. Over the past couple months, the BDC has made 76 retention visits with close to 20 or 25 employers across the city to make sure that their needs are being met as the business community, and how the BDC and the city can support them. That represents about 1,100 employees, so those retention visits are very important, and greatly appreciate the BDC for making those. I know city staff attends when we can, but again, the value of the work that the BDC does in assisting us with our corporate outreach and industrial outreach to businesses in the city that provide valuable jobs to our residents. Also, they've been very active in developing the COVID-19 response for small businesses in Monroe County. Through the Michigan Strategic Fund, there was a program set up called the Michigan Small Business Relief Fund. And the BDC, as part of the Greater Ann Arbor region and participating with the MEDC, the total program allocation across the state was $10 million, and Monroe County was allocated $133,750 as part of our allocation in that program. The BDC worked with the Chamber of Commerce and the county and the city to develop how we were going to get that money on the streets in Monroe County. We got a total of requests of about $2.2 million from all of Monroe County, obviously far outpacing what funds were available, but the BDC were able to fund 22 businesses in Monroe County, 10 of which were in the city of Monroe. I think that's very important to note that just less than half of the applicants and those that were funded were city businesses. And the grants range from $7,500 to $25,000, and the funds were designed to keep businesses afloat while they can seek some of the other resources that were made available by the federal government. So we're going to continue working with the BDC on support for the small businesses across the city. I know they have a webinar coming up this Wednesday about how small businesses can reopen and some of the precautions and steps they should be taking as they look forward to reopening to the public once again in these unprecedented times. So, part of our budget presentation this week did include an increase in our partnership with the BDC, and I just wanted to go over some of these numbers and the highlights and the work that they've been doing as our partner in economic development across the city. So with that, that's all the updates that I had for you tonight.
Thank you, Mark. It's a long list of items that are involved with and are moving forward, which is great to see. I'll see if there's any questions from council on any of the follow-up items. And I don't see nobody raising. All right, Mark, thank you. And Mr. Pastu, we'll move right along. We're at 1 hour right now, and we'll keep moving. Mr. Green.
Yeah, we have Mr. Green. I was muted there for a moment. Jeff, if you're ready. I seen Jeff earlier.
Yeah, he was on.
I'm there. I'm the technology still gets me when I'm ready to go. It's unmute the mic there.
Yeah, that's okay.
I want to say good evening to everyone. It's a good opportunity and to talk with everyone again, at least in the way that we're having to do it at this point in time. Tonight, I want to talk a little bit about the Community Development Department, essentially the building and planning departments. Talk a little bit about what's going on in this hiatus that we have in between full-time work and when we go back to work. And for both, I think, the building department and the planning department, the key things to remember is work is pretty much the same for both departments. It's just slowed down considerably. In fact, if I were to look at something that where it corresponded to, I would say it would be almost the national economy. Right after this kind of all hit, this COVID-19 virus, the economy dropped almost in free fall. Same thing with things that were going on with the departments. Inquiries, permits, requests for inspections, all those types of things dropped off precipitously at that point in time. But over the past couple of weeks, we're starting to see a little bit more of that. So the first thing I would talk about is staffing related to the building department. We'll talk a little bit about the planning department, facilities maintenance and those kind of things as I go through this. But the first phase was really for the building department, because of the drop in inquiries, because of the drop in permits and requests, those type of things. Essentially what happened was minimum staffing dropped to just a couple of people in a week at various times. And primarily that was to do basic facilities management, mechanical equipment, generators, compressors, fire safety systems, utilities, make sure that everything is working. And I think the building department does an excellent job when we're all there and they make sure that everything is maintained. And I think that works well in these type of cases where we really do cut down on the number of people that are in, and it requires less people when we're doing only that kind of work. During the first, as I said, during the first 30 days or so, only 2 staff people were really kind of scheduled to work. And primarily, again, they were handling payroll, payments, invoices, permits, plan review for emergency and work and essential services. Generally, again, those same types of things that we do, just on a greatly reduced basis. The second phase in staffing came about with kind of the uptick in inquiries that we've seen over the past couple of weeks. With this, we've started to bring in at least 1 staff person a day per week. They will not stay in probably the entire day, but they're coming in to answer inquiries, to look at complaints, to take care of inspections, process permits, and just general operation. And we might have the building official in one day, the deputy building official, the blight inspector, some of the secretaries that handle rental, as well as the building applications and the building permits. And so we're trying to keep things going. And I think, again, having them in, and we will probably see this increase a little bit to longer days as this goes on, because again, we're seeing an uptick in the inquiries that are coming in and the type of business that's going on. I happened to come down to City Hall today, and I was surprised at the number of people that were out and driving and on the street. It's really been an increase from what I've seen in past days, and I think that's probably related to some of the decisions that have went on by the governor to lifting some of this. But things like rental inspections and similar types of inspections conducted indoors or in close quarters, they were suspended on March 13th due to social distancing requirements, and they will resume once those social distancing requirements and recommendations are lifted. The building department also is getting ready and looking forward to everybody getting back, whatever date that is. We're looking at counter shields going up on those counters on the first floor that don't have windows. That's one of the things that we've been looking for. And initially, we were looking for materials. And as I'm sure most of you can imagine, plexiglass, acrylic sheets, and those things are hot items right now, just like PPE equipment is. And so ultimately what we did was the guys in building department did some measurements of the windows that are open on the first floor. We did some inquiries, and they came back and found a company that was able to fabricate shields that could be used and moved on the counters. So they're not permanent, but they are fairly substantial, and are going to have those ready, hopefully, by the time we all get back, and we put that order in and taken care of that. Also, the building department, the building official, Bill Greenhall, was looking for personal protection equipment for City Hall employees. And that will be something that comes up, I believe, in our department head meeting tomorrow morning as we begin talking about probably coming back into work at some point in the near future. So I would stop there. If anybody has questions related to the building department, I'd be happy to address those.
I do, Jeff.
Sure.
So the rental inspections aren't happening, but I had someone contact me today that received an inspection letter with the bill. So how would they handle that?
They would just need to call in to the building department at this point in time. And there is always somebody in the department every day now in the mornings. I would say the first half of the day is probably the best chance to get a hold of that. And they can discuss that with someone, either Kim Voiles or Rebecca McCullum or Bill or Lauren would be in. And they can take care of that and taking care of that issue. Because again, most things have been just kind of postponed for the immediate future, but we do want them to have them make contact.
Make contact, but no appointments are going to be available yet, correct?
Not at this time. Yep.
All right, thank you.
Sure thing.
Other questions from council? On building? No, so we'll move forward to the next, Jeff, planning.
And I was going to talk a little bit about some of the things that the building or the planning department are doing. And of course, department operations, again, we're doing the same thing as building. We've got payroll, we've got inquiries that come in, we have questions that come in about zoning and different things. And so we're handling those. I'm typically in communication with the building official, the deputy building official. We talk multiple times and communicate multiple times a week. Typically, we're together at least once a week in proper social distancing distances there. But we are in communication a lot, talking over things that are going on. Mark had mentioned the Lazy Boy Steering Committee. That's another one of those things that planning department is involved with, along with several other people, the manager and Mark and Ed Sell and Patrick Lewis. The work of the planning department goes on, and we were there kind of initially when Mr. Daly called and made that initial inquiry. We were involved with the rezoning of the property. We've kind of had a lull. And most recently, I've been working on the PUD agreement and doing some editing and some recommendations for that, which was then forwarded on to Mr. Pastu. And I would see probably our activity would kind of queue up again as we start to get site plans in and we begin working on those and working with the Planning Commission. So again, we're still staying active, although again, we do have some lulls in that. Probably this should have been at the top and something I should probably have asked Vince to put asterisks and stars around, and that's the zoning code. We have been continuing to work on the zoning ordinance update. It has been a long process. And when I say we, I'm saying in-house staff, our consultant and several staff people. We ran into several issues as we were going through this, and which no one would have expected. We have been back together over the past several weeks, and we've been doing exactly this, having Zoom meetings in which we are working, because it's a very interactive process whereby we're debating and asking questions of one another as we go through this. We have essentially completed all of the editing on the zoning code. We've got a couple of questions that will go out to various departments, but essentially the work is done, and we will be getting that back to the Planning Commission shortly after we all get back to work. So we're very happy with that. It has been a long process, and I appreciate everyone's patience as they knew that we were going through this. Next item that comes up, of course, though, is the sign ordinance, because the sign section that was in the zoning ordinance has been removed from the zoning ordinance. And so now we'll be updating the sign ordinance as we go along. So we've already started work on that. Saks building demolition, if you're familiar with the old Saks furniture store, it has been an eyesore for a number of years now. It's been vacant. It did go back to the county treasurer's office, and they have tried to work with us over the past several years of either acquiring it or getting it demolished. I'm happy to say that I have been in contact with the county treasurer, Kay Sissing, and her office and the city are working to undertake demolition of that building this year. We have got some prices back on demolition, which are very, very good. I've talked with Mr. Pastu about those, and it looks like we're going to go forward. We're just doing some final negotiations with the county treasurer's office on how we're probably going to do some marketing of that site coming up once it is demolished and that site is opened. Next item is
if I may
development.
just follow up
Yes.
on that. You know, the bid that came in was just a smidge over $100,000, which is a lot less than we would have anticipated. And so it's one of those, we think it's important to strike while the iron's hot. And so I actually want to put this on the May 4th meeting next Monday night, just to authorize council to proceed. Our share of it be a 50-50 split, so a little over $50,000. We have some money in our general fund demolition, but we also may pursue some brownfield funding as well. But we just think we need to get this thing rolling and I think very favorable with working with the county treasurer. My understanding is they're not looking to just sell it off. We'll be a part of that process. They're not going to put it on the market. We'll work together jointly in that resolution. So, which was reassuring. So, it'd be exciting to get that building down. Make no mistake about it. So, we think it's appropriate to push hard and fast on that one.
And I would add that the county treasurer has been very good in working with us. Our concern was that someone would come along and buy that on auction of tax foreclosed properties and simply sit on it and it sit there. And she and her office have been very, very good about working with us and kind of keeping that out of just that single building sale there where somebody would come in and pay the taxes and pick it up. So we appreciate all that she's done and her staff as well. One of the things that's always ongoing in our department is community development block grant. We are continuing to process subrecipient payments. We are continuing to receive currently applications for funding in the upcoming program year. Caitlin Pierce and myself have been working on and editing draft policies and procedures for the program, which we're required to do by HUD. We are in the process of preparing an annual plan for the upcoming year. And we did have a HUD monitoring visit scheduled. And of course, it was going to come in April. And with everything being shut down, it got switched initially to an online monitoring visit. And ultimately that got postponed with everything that was going on with the governor's declaration and stay-at-home orders. And they even decided not to do that. So the monitoring visit will take place probably more like in June of this year. And so again, that's where HUD either comes in or we do an online monitoring where they're reviewing a lot of the work and the records and the things that have gone on in the past program year. So we've been putting a lot of that together and don't have any real major concerns with that. We think we'll be fine with it and are well prepared. One of the things that we've also done is continuing education. This has provided an opportunity where during the average work day, I don't always have a chance to sit down and do an hour or two webinars. The downtime, the stay-at-home order has provided the opportunity for not only myself, but Caitlin as well to do some of these webinars, whether recorded or online and live. And so we've been doing webinars in planning, preservation, and community development block grant actions and opportunities and different things along those lines. And so we've been continuing to do that and make the best of our time on that. Moving on.
Can I just follow up on a couple things there with Jeff? One, going back to the CDBG, Jeff was sharing with me that HUD essentially said, well, we need to be spending money at a higher rate. The Labor Park project, if it was proceeding, would be eating up a good chunk of that project. And I think once construction is able to resume, that will happen quickly, and as well as the kitchen at the Opportunity Center as well. Once those bids are out, I mean, we can utilize a lot of those CDBG funds. The other part of it is we did receive, related to the CARES Act federal legislation, $270,000 in CDBG funds. We still got to look at the means of eligible costs and how we'll go about that additional funding coming to the city and how we can apply it to the eligible related expenses.
Exactly. And we're always required, this is not something new for this year or the past, but we're always required to be spending a certain percentage of CDBG funds. What HUD doesn't want to happen is that you're simply sitting on those funds. And so they are constantly updating us. And again, we're required to have spending that reduces that amount that we have on hand. And again, I think this is all new territory for us. It's new territory for HUD about how do we get through this. And they understand. We've had some communications with our HUD representative that in fact, we've got projects ready to go that will be using up a lot of those funds and get our drawdowns to where they should be. It's just they haven't taken place at this point in time. The other thing regarding the additional CDBG funds, we are trying to get some clarification from HUD. Again, this is all new to them. but how much money and where it can be spent. What we've initially seen is those additional funding or funds really are very narrow in focus, but we're trying to get a little more clarification on what we can use those for. As we do, we will get that on to the manager and let, you know, and Mr. Sell will all be taking a look at, I guess, how we're going to handle those. And I think I've got one more slide here real quickly if Michelle will do that one. And that's with regard to facilities maintenance here in City Hall. And that was, of course, a key issue when all this began. City Hall, after the shutdown, City Hall and city-owned facilities, the libraries, we had 2 people from the building department staff cleaning and sanitizing City Hall. This was essentially per the CDC guidelines for preventative disinfecting and sanitizing. They were working for probably about 2 to 3 straight weeks of sanitizing and cleaning everything. Once we got that underway and under control, we essentially closed off sections of City Hall that weren't being used. Those areas which today we are having staff in and working in, they are receiving kind of an ongoing routine cleaning and sanitizing every day. We have one person coming in to take care of that, Victoria, which I think most of you know. And she's been in and taking care of that. So we're continuing to maintain that to make sure that everything is clean. Those areas where we're seeing the public coming in, and we've got an upcoming election with Michelle's department. We're going to be working with them, but I think we've kind of got that under control again. I appreciate all the work that the building department staff did to kind of just take that on and handle all of that. And back down to the counter shields, I think I talked a little bit about those, but we are looking for those to have counter shields fabricated for use at least in the foreseeable future. And we'll determine at some point early on whether, or not early on, but coming up, whether we will want to do something more permanent. And I guess that's a decision that we will make with Mr. Pastu. So that's all I have. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. And I'll see if there's any questions from council. I know there's a variety of topics there. I'm looking to see if there's any questions from council. No, Councilman Felder, I don't see on my screen, but I know you're still with us. And Councilman Moore, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Just a quick question for Jeff. Just what kind of cost are these counter shields going to incur on us?
They're going to run, I believe, just over $3,000. And again, one of the things that we contemplated early on was whether the guys in the building department could fabricate those. And we've got a couple of guys that are actually very good and I think could have fabricated them. But the problem was getting that material. I know they did check out a couple of the home improvement stores, the large ones that would carry these acrylic sheets, and they did not have the same quality, the same thickness of materials that we're getting. Also, it was just getting the amount that we needed for those windows. And so this is a company that's going to be fabricating them. They will be prepared. They got underway. We worked as quickly as we could with Mr. Pastu to get that request into them so that we could have them back. Our tentative date, our focus date is on the 11th of May, but we'll see if we're going to be back, and I'm hoping we're going to be back in City Hall. But that's the date we're shooting for, getting those back and ready to go.
And is that for all of them or just a couple of them? How many is that?
No, that's to cover all the open windows on the first floor.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure thing.
I have a question too.
Councilman Drain.
Have we looked into any government reimbursements for any of that spending? Because I know with cleaning supplies, they will reimburse 80%. Is that possible with the shields?
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. I think some of the funding that we're now charging, for example, some of the essential employees, I believe is coming out of those requests to FEMA. And we'll be looking to see what we can, if we can charge those back to someone. Absolutely.
Good, thank you.
Other questions? Jeff, I just have a couple. I know first, appreciate the continued work on the zoning ordinance. as you said, the unexpected things in the past and moving forward that with the really getting the definitions written. And that the sign ordinance as well being separated. I think that was a good decision to move forward here. A couple items I know that we'll have the opportunity when the zoning ordinance comes forward in detail with council to go through that kind of as not just the committee had the opportunity, but for council as a whole. Couple items I'll just share that seem to be rising again, coming back to whether it's email or calls that are in there. I know I just shared with Mr. Pastu as well. It just was yesterday or so. One was on the fire pits, and I know that we've had conversations in the past about that.
Do you want me to talk about that, Your Honor? I'm muted.
I would say if you want to go ahead, Vince, and then I'll follow up with a couple of comments.
Can you hear me or am I muted?
I can hear you.
Okay. The mayor and I had some discussion about some of these fire pits, and I'm not sure it necessarily would go into, the zoning code. We had done one when I was manager up in Farmington, and it was part of our fire protection ordinance. And so, we'd put together some guidelines. I haven't had any discussion with Chief White regarding that, but, this last weekend, we enjoyed one in our patio area. So it's, we've got one of those little chimneys that we use. So it is something, it's nice, but considering where I was in Farmington for a long time, it was more of a suburban area. And so there's certain conditions that you would want to consider in going that route, but it's certainly something I think we could talk about and typically would through a work session, which I'll talk a little bit more about it later on.
And
I look forward to the opportunity to get through that. Mr. Green, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we did have this request come in probably about 2 years ago and had some discussion on it. I don't know if Chief White is still on, but one of the issues was that open burn is not permitted. I'm getting some feedback.
I am still on, and that is the case. There is no open burning, a city ordinance, per city ordinance.
And so one of the things I guess that we could begin to look at, though, would be to determine whether burning something where you're burning wood or something like that that's combustible outside, as opposed to burning like a propane gas. That may be some difference, but I don't think it was when the last time we spoke.
So actually, propane gas is okay. You're not burning. It's not a product. It's not carbon based. So it's a complete burn when you're burning propane gas. We do allow those with UL ratings, appropriate UL ratings, but the ordinance is pretty specific as far as open burning in the city. It's not allowed. Actually, it's a state ordinance, but they allow the local municipalities to have input on it.
And I think that's just a conversation for another. I think a work session with council and certainly engaging with Chief White, in some of that. So.
Okay, I'll see if there's any other questions. Mr. Green, I know we talked about the monument and the naming policy. Obviously, that's not a priority at this point. I bet I was recontacted by one of those requesters. We'll get to that later, I think, in the year here. Just finalize that. We have 2 or 3 requests around that topic, but just want to throw it out there to make sure. I know that you're thinking about it as I have that draft that you have as well. And I know that'll come back to council as well. And I don't know if anybody else may have been getting those calls too. So I just wanted to raise that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, Mr. Pastu.
Next we have Mr. Lewis. I think about 8 slides, and he's going to go through them quick, right, Patrick?
I will certainly try.
If you could hold for a second, I think Councilman Felder might have a question. Did you?
Sure.
Yes, I did, Your Honor, if that's all right.
Yes, please go forward.
Mr. Green, as we talk about cleaning and sanitizing our facilities, certainly City Hall is not the only facility among the city's facilities. I would hope and expect that you are already engaging the library and the ALCC and the former multi-sports complex in terms of the policies and procedures that we are undergoing to clean and sanitize buildings as the safety and welfare of our employees, as well as members of the public that would be visiting these facilities, is absolutely critical and in the forefront of all of our minds right now. I don't know if we're in charge of cleaning those facilities. I believe that they're in charge of maintenance by themselves, but I would hope, and you're probably already doing this, of sharing this information with them of how we plan on going to reopening these facilities in terms of cleaning.
Actually, the Navarre Library, the Dorsch Library, the Sawyer House were also cleaned during that first several weeks by city staff and cleaned down. And those were shut down, is my understanding at this point. And most organizations, have their processes in place for cleaning. I know the National Park, I'm sure already have their procedures and rules and procedures out. So we'd be happy to share that. But yes, we did take care of city-owned facilities as well as City Hall when this all first happened, and City Hall and those were shut down.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Lewis.
Okay, Honorable Mayor and Council, Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering Public Services. I'll start with my usual lead-in, and then I'll also apologize for the fact that my laptop is 8 years old and does not have a webcam. I'm not deliberately trying to avoid you by showing you my face tonight, but I'll go through these as quickly as I can. I wanted to give the refuse, I broke this down to public services and engineering, and then with our DPS activities, I kind of broke it down into past, present, and future. So you get an idea of what we've been doing, what we're presently doing, and our plan for transitioning back in. So I won't go into too much detail on the refuse contract because I think you've been staring at this slide for the last 5 minutes. But essentially, that's our most important service, and the refuse contract is provided through Waste Management. Their primary goals are kind of the same as ours were at the beginning of this, not knowing how many people might fall ill and the needs to quarantine. They started out focusing primarily on the primary service, and that was the garbage collection. One thing that's been a little bit contentious with some of our residents who we appreciate wanting to do the right thing is that recycling, they have been picking it up, but they asked our permission and it was granted to landfill that material until the recycling center opens back up. And that's a third-party center, so they don't have control over staffing of it. They're basically beholden to someone else. So residents that we've publicized that, so residents that do want to hold their recycling until we can say that it is going to the recycling center, that's fine. We encourage that, but we will announce that when that change is made. They're hoping in the next couple of weeks it should be open. So yard waste, I do apologize. We had a little bit of confusion on that because Waste Management was pretty clear they weren't going to start yard waste at the front end of this normally on April 6th, but actually the second week they already started trying to grab it when they could. So they are officially picking it up as of April 20th, and that should be stabilized now that we've got the first week. Bulk is the only thing that they are officially not picking up right now. But I'll tell you unofficially, Richie, our field supervisor, has been telling me, he says, if we can grab it, we will grab it. So I haven't heard of a lot of complaints. So I think generally speaking, they've been getting most of that. So they haven't had a problem in recent weeks, and I've not heard of any challenges they have. So it should be, once we can officially open the recycling centers there, we should be back to normal. So that's my refuse contract piece of it. Maybe I'll pause to see if there's any questions on that before I go on with the rest of our activities.
Questions from council?
Okay.
Continue.
We'll fire on. Okay, so the DPS, I'll sort of give you what we focused on during the time when we were trying to keep a bare bones staff, just so you have an idea of what it was we were doing. We kept at least one mechanic in the shop because we always know we're going to have some emergency vehicles that we need to take care of. We have our statutory misdig markings. Those are our storm sewers that we have to mark or else we're liable for any damage. most of you know, the last public meeting we had in the council chambers, we talked about the east side of the city flooding. We needed to keep manning those flood pumps by the wastewater plant, so we had to have at least somebody running those every other day or so. And then what we did for the first 3-4 weeks is if we needed a cold patching crew or a forestry crew to pick up limbs, because we did have some high winds, we'd assemble a small crew and we'd have them come in 1 or 2 days a week, and we'd keep them physically separate. So our strategy the first 3-4 weeks was keep everybody at arm's length from everybody else. We did have, so I call that the bare bones staff. We had the superintendent working from his office, and then we had like the operations supervisor doing mist digs and 1 mechanic. So that was kind of our first 3-4 weeks worth of staffing. And that was designed to follow the strict orders, keep the disease from spreading. So we can go on to what I'd call the present, and that would be the phase back in. We did start sweeping even while we're, because one of the things I wanted to point out is we're kind of trying to strike this balance between the governor's stay home, stay safe order and essential personnel. And while you could argue that city staff could be considered essential personnel regardless of what they're doing, we tried to respect what we're asking our private entities to do. So in other words, there are things that we do in any given week that may not be considered truly essential in times like these. And I'll give you an example of banner changes. I mean, I'm not going to be out on the street having our crews changing the banners. So you'll notice we still have snowflakes up downtown. So we could do it. We probably have an exemption, but I think publicly it looks bad if we're doing things that that most people could say are non-essential. So one of the things we did think was essential was street sweeping, which on its face doesn't seem essential, but if you start to think of the amount of debris we have this time of year, it could really save us in having to respond to those on an emergency basis if the streets are flooded. So we think it's easier to keep 2 sweeper operators running in their own vehicle themselves, where they're not exposed to anyone else doing preventative maintenance, than it would be to have to call in a crew of 2 or 3 people who would then be working together. So we've been sweeping now for 3 weeks. We did start last week with all of our employees back. We did have one that has family concerns related to a vulnerable population within their household. So we've kept that employee back. And we did have a couple that had cold-like symptoms that we have periodically just kept off for a few days. So, but what we did was we split the crew into halves, and that's where we are right now. We've got 3 days on, 2 days off, and then they'll flip and they'll do the crew that had 2 days 1 week will do 3 the next. So that keeps us at a point where if someone on one of the halves came down with something that could be COVID, we could isolate that half of the crew and still have people to respond to bona fide emergencies. And that's what it's been about, staff preservation. We're still selecting other tasks with relatively safe separation for the time being. Stump grinding we can do with a single or a double. Cold patching, we'll have the lead truck will be driven by one person with a second person following in a pickup. We'll do low limbing work. A lot of that can be single person. And then we've had both mechanics, for the most part, working simultaneously now because we're trying to get a lot of the parks and recreation stuff up. But keep in mind, again, we've got the social distancing, and we've found actually a lot of our DPS activities are actually pretty good at being able to distance. And so like our mechanics have a large shop and they can stay well away from each other. So that's what we're working on, I'll say month 2. And then now transitioning into what I'll say, this is our future slide. I just kind of want to point out a few things that we haven't been able to do that we've either deliberately held off on or would be perceived as non-essential. And just to kind of give you a heads up that these are a few things we may be behind on, so that we're normally on. Memorial Place display, we're still working with Rulig's Greenhouse to get those in. We probably will make Memorial Day, but I can't guarantee it. So we haven't put the boat docks in at Hellenberg yet. High water is making those a challenge anyway. We have to make some fabrication changes to get those so they're above the water. Forestry, I will say, that's an operation that we're busy all year long with something. So losing a month of production is problematic. We don't have anything that's an acute problem, but it's like everything else. I don't want to tell you we have excess capacity, because we don't. Same thing's true on the Vactor. Normally the springtime is when we're doing a lot of work in cleaning out catch basins from the winter debris and things like that. Because the Vactor is a 2-person operation, because they work in close proximity, because they're sucking out debris that has the potential to be contaminated. That was certainly one of our higher risk activities. So we still are going to be pretty sparing with that, at least the first month or so we're back. So that we're going to be behind on Vector work, and we're going to be behind in forestry. Lotus Fountain, Munson Park Fountain, those are usually in by now. The Munson Fountain is anyway. Lotus Fountain, we usually don't start up till toward the end of May when the trees are done with their debris. Again, those could be delayed a little bit. And one of the things we talked about back in late February, early March was we were trying to get with Solomon Diving to get a new flap gate fabricated down by the wastewater plant, and look at getting a kind of like a bulkhead, a temporary bulkhead in the structure that backfeeds Bayview and Glenwood area. We can't get them in because they're a private contractor, non-essential work activities. So that's going to be delayed, and it could very well be delayed beyond the worst of the season too. So we'll keep monitoring that, and as soon as we can get them in. And as I mentioned here, I just want to point out again, we may continue to struggle through the year to try to stay up one of the number of other minor service areas, things like alley grading that we would normally be starting on pretty soon. Those are going to have to get pushed off a little bit. So that's what we've been focusing on. Like I said, we've had about half time where most employees have worked about half of this time, and that was by design. We've directed that. So naturally it's going to set us a little behind. So switching over, one other thing I want to talk about before I forget on the DPS slide, I did not mention it, but our grass contract usually would have started the week of April 13th. We did, I think they might have jumped in and cut a couple of things on our behalf before it was clear that they were not, that we wanted to keep them away. So we did direct them, said, just stay back. Don't start as per normal. But we did start them this past Monday. So I'm not aware that anything's in terrible shape, but that was one thing I did want to mention that I forgot to put on the slide. Okay, switching over to I'll call it the engineering staff and the clerical team, because our clerical staff consists of 2 aides that are split between the 2 departments. They have identical job descriptions, and the engineering staff, it basically consists of 4 full-time people besides that. So we've been trying to work the clerical team other than the first week or 2, where we were just trying to keep everyone away for a little while until we knew what we were dealing with. We've kind of been rotating them. I had both of them answering phones when they could and responding to voicemails from home the first couple of weeks, and they were kind of doing like half days. We started bringing them in. We brought them, first we sent them down to DPS because there's a back office in the shop that is completely isolated from everyone else. So that actually is probably our long-term strategy for, I'll say, social distancing at the office, is that we'll probably have one of them stationed at DPS and the other one up at the engineering and public services counter at City Hall. And that may be for a number of months. But we've been rotating the 2 of them for the last couple of weeks, 3 days on, 2 days off, and then switching. I have been they've both been handling the mail also for the City Hall. And I've been working remotely almost completely the last few weeks. I was in the office the first 3 or 4 weeks doing a lot of file management, a lot of things that I've never been able to do in my tenure. Frightening to say it's been 10 years since I've cleaned out all of my project files and things like that. So we actually did make a lot of headway on some housekeeping things. So that was good. And so then I also was able to get our assistant city engineer and one of my technicians that's very good on drawing, cleanup, and design. I shipped them everything we had, and that included some street projects that we weren't even intending to build this year, but we had surveyed. I'm pleased to say that 2 of them have been able to operate almost completely remotely here because we don't have any construction going. And then we've had the other technician, that's Toby, who's our field guy, who's our field lead. He had some backlog work from last year that he needed to get some field records done. He was also working on a few other as-built drawings. So I've had him in the office kind of rotating with the ladies, and it's worked out real well. We've, like I said, the last few weeks we've been able to have more than half time for sure working remotely, but just continuing to plow ahead for the future. We've had a few right-of-way permits, oversized load. We've actually got a super load coming through town tomorrow, and a couple of sanitary connection permits. We've been issuing those. I've been able to flag those, grab those, and issue those. So we really haven't had any delays to speak of at issuing our permits, but we don't have anywhere near the volume of the building department or the water department in some of their new service applications. So fortunately, we are able to keep up on that. And I will say, looking forward, we've identified a lot of ways that my department in engineering at least can easily minimize the number of people in the building and still work pretty effectively. So I will say if you try to grab a silver lining out of this, I think we've been able to find some ways we can do things even better. So moving on then to our construction projects. And I know I mentioned, it was mentioned that I would talk a little bit about the Lazy Boy demolition. We did have 2 active contracts at the time the first stay in place order took effect. We were hopeful that at least one of those could continue, and that would be the Lazy Boy demolition. We sort of joke around the office, say, what in the world would be safer than a bunch of guys running around with respirators on doing asbestos abatement? But unfortunately, there was not a case to be made that either of those contracts was essential construction. So both contractors felt they needed to shut down. That would be Homrich at the Lazy Boy demolition and E.R. Zeiler from Temperance at the Labor Park project. So both of those got started a couple of days and didn't get very far. Neither contractor has indicated that they have a problem with there shouldn't be any cost implications. What we will need to do on at least the Lazy Boy demolition is there will have to be an extension in the completion date. Completion date on the Lazy Boy demolition was June 30th. Their original schedules, they thought they could be done around Memorial Day. So they thought they might be able to beat it by as much as a month. I'm still hopeful that maybe they can, but that would now put us instead of May, it would put us at the end of July. If by rights, they would probably have an extension going almost all the way through August now from a contract standpoint. So it's imperative we get them going back there, but they still, both contractors seem on board. I don't know what they theoretically, our contract language has a number of triggers that would, that could deal with this, but both of them seem to be fully invested and want to proceed. So as soon as they get the okay, I think we'll be seeing them both back, and that will then take 2 of my 3 engineering staff besides myself and remove them from the office largely for field work. So those are the 2 that we had underway when this all unleashed, and then we had 3 that I've been working on. This has occupied the bulk of my time here the last few weeks, is getting the plans and specifications finished, mashed together, reviewed, and ready for bids. We're looking at a common bid advertisement of this Thursday. We've got a meeting internally to discuss the final particulars on electronic bidding and electronic opening, so that contractors will not even come into City Hall for any reason whatsoever, and we'll open those via Zoom. And those are going to be due on the 21st. Those 3 contracts are the infrastructure, so that'd be the underground utilities, the road paving, detention ponds, some other things for Lazy Boy. The 2020 concrete paving program, I've listed the streets there for you. That also includes the Mason Run sidewalk infill, we call it. That was the gentleman that approached the council about closing in those gaps. We're very much in favor of that, and we included that. One thing that is not included in that contract, though, is our regular sidewalk program, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then the third thing is I'll call it our building demolition program, but that's the additional, mostly residential dwellings on there that we picked up, the miscellaneous. We've got 2 on East Elm, and then we've got a few that we picked up in the Heritage Corridor area, as well as 2 storage buildings at the old DPS yard that are constantly vandalized, and we just want to take those down. Those should be relatively cheap. So we're gonna throw those all out there because we believe by now the contractors should be seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and be willing to bid these. A couple of these were ready to go a month, or could have been made ready to go a month ago if we'd wanted, but the climate was just so uncertain. We were afraid that we wouldn't know if we got the best possible bids. So those are the 3 contracts we're going to be kicking out on the street. The 2 of our water main projects, and I've mentioned this to council, I think briefly earlier in the winter, that because we have a fairly small water main program this year, and we only had 1 bidder last year, we've got a very good relationship with E.R. Zeiler, and we've asked them to quote both of these 2 projects, and if they're within the budget, we intend to recommend those to you as change orders. I was hoping to be able to potentially get those to you on the May 4th meeting. I'm still waiting for final pricing on the West Lorraine water main, but on the Monroe Street Bridge, MDOT had a few changes they needed to see. So it could be the 18th on both of these, but that's what we're intending. As long as we get pricing that we're comfortable with. I just don't think there's enough meat here to get very very many bids, and it would allow us to control the schedule. So I think that's what we'll be recommending. So that's what we've got as far as current construction or things that are in the immediate pipeline. Future construction, these are, I've sort of separated these into potential projects likely to proceed, big question marks, and then a general statement. The other potential 2020 projects that have been funded either through the capital improvements program or the regular budget are the crack sealing and spray patching program. I don't see any reason that can't go ahead. We did already get an offer from last year's contractor to hold their pricing for this year. And since they were the only bidder in 2018 and they extended for 19, we're more than happy to have them do that. They did an excellent job for us. One project that I do want to move up the list because I found out something the other day that I didn't know, and that was that the County Road Commission intends to resurface their portion of North Dixie Highway over I-75, whereas we had our portion of it from basically 200 feet east of Turnus Drive to the underpass area, the rail bridge. We had that program for 2021 construction. I think we can save a significant amount of money on traffic control if we can jump onto the county's contract. So I've explored that possibility. So I will probably look at asking you to reprogram some money we intended to use this year on either, I think it was Washington Street, and move the Dixie Highway project in its place so we can take advantage of that. That was going to be federally funded for 2021, but I think we'll save enough that it's going to make it very, very justified, and we can use those federal funds somewhere else. The other couple of projects that are likely a go because the funding isn't really subject to budget cuts at the state level, and that would be the Raisin Street Water Main Loop in Maybe, Exeter Township, and sanitary sewer rehabilitation, which is a relatively small program. A couple of big question marks though we have, and that is Vince and I have already talked about this. Sidewalk replacement program is a couple of reasons. One, it's general fund funded. It's largely general fund funded, even though we have a small component of property owner assessments. The vast majority we're starting to see now, because we've already been through town 4 or 5 times in the last 3 decades, is we're seeing a lot of tree roots that are humping up. So generally speaking, more than 2/3 of this program is city funding and it's general fund. And then there's an assessment component that may be a little unpopular right now. So my recommendation would be that we again look at holding this project off until 2021, and then again pick a larger area for efficiencies. And then of course the big project that I really hate to kick down the road, but given its size and its scope, we may have to, and that's the St. Mary's Garden Storm Sewer Project. We can complete the next phase of the design so that we see what our cost implications are going to be, but that may be one that we're going to have difficulty moving forward here in the near future. And then Vince and I have also talked about the other street projects that we have that were funded through this year's CIP. We've got a couple of asphalt streets, West Noble and Washington being a couple of examples that we have not yet bid because, again, we don't have a lot of meat there. We were looking to see what the bids we might get on something like the Lazy Boy infrastructure and some things like that, to see whether maybe we could explore a change order to one of those contracts, just because you don't usually get a lot of bids on $250,000 worth of streets. So, but given the uncertainty, which goes to bullet point number 3, the Act 51 funding, if people aren't buying fuel, our Act 51 receipts, I think Ed can comment on this, but I've heard something on the order of a 30 to 40% potential hit. So I think it's in our best interest to probably hold off the remaining streets that we don't already have bid, that are asphalt streets, and go ahead with the concrete program. But Vince and I will look at the numbers very carefully on the concrete bids and see if we need to even lop off one of those streets. So the only other thing that I wanted to mention that wasn't in the slides is because I heard somebody talking about the Commission on Environment meeting. We've decided that Traffic Committee at this point is not an essential committee, so we canceled both the March and April meetings, and we may yet cancel the May meeting, but we've only got a couple of items that are not time critical, so we're not going to explore the Zoom option. We'll just cancel those. So I did not mention that, but I wanted to bring it up since I heard it discussed. So that's all I have on my spiel. Hopefully that, I think I was more like 15 minutes, but I tried my best.
Did good.
All right, boss says I did good. I'll take it.
Any questions for Patrick? I'll talk a little bit more when I get toward the end there about the concerns with funding and part of the rationale for some of what Patrick was talking about. I'm going to ask before I'm going to switch the gears just a little bit. We're going to jump over Loretta's and Michelle, would you just take a couple minutes and talk about the clerk treasurer's office?
Sure. For us, really, nothing has changed about what we're doing. It's more how we're doing it. We're still, obviously, you've heard a lot recently about the elections. We're still preparing for elections. We're still processing payments. We had to settle with the county in March while we were trying to close things down. We're working on preparing the tax bills that will go out May 11th. And obviously, we're working with minutes and agendas. Some of our meetings that we support with the commissions and boards, those meetings have been canceled, but like with the pension board, that still requires a lot of work, even though the meeting ultimately ended up being canceled. So we continue to support the things that we support and actively pursue the functions that we are mandated to handle. We have, I have to stop for a second. I too have been really, really impressed isn't the right word, but it kind of is. I mean, staff in my department has really stepped up. Up until recently, we were working one person at a time, and we were managing to keep up with the mail and everything related to elections. We most recently, really this week, had to start bringing in more than one person at a time. In fact, we were all there today, but we, thanks to working with Vince, we have 2 staff that go off to separate, one to the old Social Security office, which is an area that we work in frequently. One went to the first floor conference room. I was in my office, and the remaining 2 staff were socially distanced in our office, and everybody is following the directive. They're wearing masks when there's more than one person present, and they're wearing gloves, and just really proud of the way they've all stepped up and really appreciate their hard work. We are going forward with the May election. The governor very early on designated election work as essential. So we will be there on Saturday to collect absentee ballots and issue absentee ballots. We are fortunate in the clerk treasurer's office that we're able to keep our 2 open windows closed, and we will be processing interactions with the public through the windows that we have in the treasurer's office. So that'll be helpful. We'll be marking the floor to ensure that those that do choose to vote absentee in person are distanced, know where they should be standing to be 6 feet apart. And I'm working with Vince in the building department to kind of just make sure that everyone knows that there's no need to wander around City Hall while you're there. There's nothing is going to be open except the clerk's office on Saturday and then again on election day. So just to help everybody's know where to go. We're going to be making sure there's some direction to help people go right over to the treasurer's office. Other than that, I think, like I said, it's pretty much business as usual. It's just how we do it and to comply with orders and to make sure it's safe for everyone. Someone said this the other day. If they keep it safe for their staff, they know they're keeping it safe for the public. And the clerk's office, and I know that's what we're all trying to do at City Hall. That's the plan, right? Keep everyone as safe as we can in these unusual times. So I don't know if anyone has any questions.
I'll start with a quick notice that we're just at the 2-hour mark. Obviously, being a work session, we have to have a appropriate action by the council to desire to continue. So with, I guess, a motion in a second.
Your Honor.
Councilman Lamore?
Yes, make a motion that we continue on with the work session.
Second.
Councilman Lamore, Councilman Felder. I'll just, clerk, you don't need a roll call or it's just all?
No.
Okay, everybody in all in favor say aye.
Aye. Your Honor.
Aye. I see it. And I think Mr. Buds also has a follow-up that he needs to insert at this time, and then we'll get back to questions for the clerk. And we have a couple additional items. Mr. Buds.
Your Honor, I was just going to give the reminder about the 2-hour limit, but the other thing is that on that motion, we should, and I know it's largely procedural, but because of the executive order, we should quickly take a roll call vote just to be compliant with that order.
Thank you. Thank you. So there is a motion by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilman Felder, and to stay in compliance with the EO. Clerk, please call the roll on that to continue the work session beyond the 2-hour mark.
Councilperson Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Echoangeli?
Yes.
Vining,
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Buds. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy, any questions for the clerk's office? I'll look to the council members. No hands are coming up. And clerk, if you, Michelle, if you had something further, if not, we'll go back
So
to-
I see a couple of hands up. Does Councilperson Angeli or Lamore have a question? It may just be left over on my screen.
Okay.
I had my hand up to make the motion.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
It didn't
okay.
see them up. Sorry.
All right.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I mean, I should mention, even though that there are adjustments that have had to be made with the elections in particular, we are still being held accountable, just like we're still being held accountable to the Open Meetings Act and the things that, Mr. Buds makes sure that we've stayed on track with tonight. We had a public accuracy test this morning, virtually done. Thank you to the entire election commission was there, so I appreciate that. And it was a different way of doing business, but the objective was accomplished. There were witnesses to the testing of the election equipment that will be utilized. And I just think the last thing I want to say is that our system isn't designed yet to be an all absentee system. Typically, we have about 1,000 votes. AV ballots go out for an election like this election. And we right now have about 3,600 ballots that we've sent out for this election. And just to give you an idea, in 2016 and then in 2018, we were around 2,000 absentee ballots that were sent out. So, and those are obviously the November 2016 election was a big election. So you can see how the all absentee push by the Bureau of Elections and mailing everyone applications has kind of changed some of the habits. And so I'm mentioning this because I don't know what's going to happen for August. There's talk at various levels, at the federal level and also at the state level, that we might move to more of this absentee voting. I know that there are a number of people who have already expressed concern to me about opening the precincts in August. So we'll just have to wait and see, but it could very well, this could be the beginning of a new normal for the clerk's office, and what that's going to mean for budget, et cetera. I'm not sure. There's probably a trade-off in costs, but I'll make sure that I keep you apprised of all of that. And finally, just a reminder that for those of you who want to come and vote in person, you are certainly welcome to do that on Saturday or on election day at the clerk's office. But I just want to remind everyone that you'll be casting a ballot essentially absentee. You'll be voting in person absentee. You will be issued a ballot, you will fill it out, you will turn it back into the clerk's office, and it will be sent to our absentee counting board, which is in the building. It's just, down and it'll be in the council chambers. But it won't be the same experience as you going to a precinct. So if you're able to vote at home, I really encourage you to vote at home. Not trying to stop anyone from voting in person, but for everyone's safety, I think at this time it's something that folks, I encourage them to think about doing. And that's all.
Thank you, Michelle. Mr. Pastu, I think I'll just move right to you. I know we have your correspondence as well as from Loretta, as well as some materials, a lot to review here regarding recreation.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before I introduce, Loretta to talk about, some, program cancellations that both her and I had discussed. I know you received the memo that she had sent to me last week, talking about many of the items that we're going to go through, and we provided a listing of the recreation programs as well as the special events. And so, but I do think, in light of where we are right now with this pandemic, still testing being an issue, still recommended by public health officials to maintain the social distancing. And there is no vaccination, obviously, at this point in time. We do think that we should be canceling a lot of the programs, recreational programs, summer concert series, park reservations, anything that's going to involve any kind of congregation, although not necessarily parks related, but special events through August 30th. And then certainly Loretta had identified a recommended course of action related to maintaining park facilities during this state of emergency, as well as just the ongoing parks maintenance that would take place during the emergency. So I'm not sure if Loretta, you want to add a little bit more to that?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. And I appreciate you saving the best for last, Vince. Thank you so much. I do want to say that we've had an outstanding spring of park use. Everyone and their dog literally is walking and they're in the parks, and that's phenomenal to see. It's been one of the great saving graces of the state and even of the country that people are out in force using their parks. So the main things that I looked at when we, Vince and I were talking, and as I went over it, we have the social distancing 6-foot mandate, which is keeping us all safe. We don't want to share things we have to touch, such as a ball or a water spigot even, or a basketball rim. Well, and the third thing is, if it's out there and we're allowing people to use it, can it be cleaned adequately? And so as a result, I had given you a list where restrooms and drinking fountains remained closed. As soon as City Hall closed, we did close off. We took the swings down and we snow fenced the playscape. As much as we would love kids to be on everything, we can't keep that adequately cleaned, and it'd be very hard to social distance 6-foot children playing on a great playscape. So I know some of the county parks have closed due to people not being able to social distance. We had already put up the basketball, the sand volleyball, or maybe the tennis and the pickleball nets. If we do decide to close down some of the amenities, it might be a better thing for us to remove those nets so that people aren't congregating. It's more often common for people to congregate than it is for just 1 or 2 people to be on a court. So at this point, I know Vince had forwarded on the list of park amenities. Our park workers are back working. We had one park supervisor working just for about three or 4 weeks, mainly collecting trash while we were trying to keep the curve flattened. Our 2 full-time and then 1 6-month Teamster are back to work. We are not going to have our seasonal employees back, as they have to share a truck. They'd probably be sharing job duties. We do have 1 retired gentleman who does come 6 months out of the year as just a seasonal, and we'd like to have him back, which would make a crew of 4. There are a lot of jobs that really should be done in the parks. If you remember, last year was so wet, we weren't even able to have the outfield mowed in the youth fields. The grass was growing up to your knees because the tractors couldn't get in. We've been wanting to put in tiles so that drainage can happen and the kids can go back onto those fields, and a lot of other amenities need some of that kind of work, which is hard during the time frame when you're having programs and you really only have good work for a good work environment that you can get in for 6 months. So the parks crew has a lot going on this year that we would like to catch up, which is long past due. Every cloud has a silver lining, and that's one of the silver linings that we have. The only thing that I did think we really could keep open was our community garden plot. By nature, you are alone on your plot. The smallest plot is 10 by 10 feet. So you would be socially distanced. We would just turn the water off so that many people weren't touching the same faucet and let Mother Nature kind of water. And if people weren't okay with that, we would be happy to give them a refund. But we just want to make sure if people are touching something that we're encouraging them that it would have to be kept clean, and we really can't guarantee those kinds of things. As disappointing as it might be to have some of our park amenities closed for the summer, our options are very slim and few, that we want to keep everyone safe. We want to keep, if things are out there that can be used, people need to feel confident and safe, and we want them to. So If you have any questions about anything that I did send out, please ask.
Councilman Michelangeli. I think you're muted, sir.
Oops.
Are we able to, at the community gardens, set up a temporary irrigation system that we would only turn on at a certain time and turn off? So in case we do, they're predicting a very hot summer, that people, if they have their gardens, they would get some form of water?
I could look into that. I'm not sure I could answer that off the top of my head. That it could be costly. It would depend on how much that would entail. They're pretty long. I'm not exactly sure, but I know it's quite a few plots in a row, maybe 200 or 300 feet. And we could look into that. I don't know what the cost would be.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions for Councilman Whitman?
Yes, I don't know where to find my little waving.
That's good. I saw you waving.
Hi, Loretta. This
Hi.
is Paul. I was reading the email.
Yeah.
And in the email, it mentioned something about removing the picnic tables. And I was wondering about the benches along through the city, if they were going to be removed or if they would stay.
You know, I'm not exactly sure. That's a very gray area. The picnic tables that are just scattered throughout the parks, we can pick them up. The benches, some of the benches are cemented in. I don't know if that would fall under sort of a general category that people would need to be careful if they're touching anything that's public. I know there's some along the bike paths. I don't think they could be removed.
Well, I have a concern seeing as just talking about myself personally, I'm wanting to start walking and, exercising my knees. And,
Sure.
So I need a place to sit. I can't walk all the way around town and not take breaks.
I
So
understand.
that's my concern that,
Sure.
I just, was wondering if it had been considered or a decision made so I could give my feedback.
In the park, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another. I know that if you walk around town, a lot of that would be outside the park. I do believe, as I said, a lot of the benches are cemented in. And I'm not even sure it would be a problem if there are just sporadic picnic tables out, because people do need a spot to sit down sometimes. We aren't able to clean those on an ongoing, we can clean them, but are you ever able to clean anything often enough in this type of a situation would be my concern. But on the other hand, I think people are generally aware that they either need to not touch, maybe you're sitting down and your clothes are touching the bench, but you don't put your hands on it.
Well, and one of the things that I did see in an ad that some of the cities are covering up the benches and then installing benches that are for one person, so that you couldn't be sitting next to each other, and they cover up the other one so that they can't be used. And that way, if you have medical issues, you have a place that you can sit.
Sure. I'm not sure if we shouldn't be able to just leave the benches that are there in, and that, they're really not going to call to congregate. And a lot of times it's the same people in the same family that may share a bench.
Right.
So I wouldn't have a problem just with the benches that are already out, just remaining out for people to sit. And just as we all probably should be doing, bringing hand sanitizer after we touch any surface that's a public surface.
Okay, well, thank you. You answered my question.
Thank you.
Other council questions?
I have one.
No, Councilwoman Dramini.
So in regards to the picnic tables, I think they should be removed because I think people are gonna sit at them and kids are gonna sit and play around the picnic table. So I personally think they should be removed. I know how people are in our bus shelters. They're sitting in the benches and they're congregating. Even though we're not going to those bus stops, they're congregating and they're drinking. So we have to patrol all the stops just to get people out of there. So same thing would be with the picnic tables. That's just my opinion.
Well, in the memo, I was probably more towards the austere side, that we really do need to just sort of, hunker down and try to refrain from having things out that could in any way cause people to congregate or have unclean surfaces. My greatest concern is that if we are all safe this summer, that we can have a better school fall opening, in September, whatever that may be. And we do have just a few programs that happen in the fall that we would probably need to decide by June if it looked as though social distancing would be not enforced in September. As long as social distancing is enforced and not sharing things that we commonly touch, that really will probably prohibit all of our programs. So we'll have to see what happens in the fall, but that would be a great concern.
Good, thanks, Loretta.
Other questions for Loretta? I don't see anybody waving.
Your Honor?
Loretta, I just want to say thanks for the information, the detail on all the activities and programs. Gives a good review of some of those that may not have been thought of, but as I was thinking about all that is being done, so I appreciate the details and the programs. It really helps, I'm sure, for yourself and the administration, but also us as council to look at it and recognize, where we go from here when we do get back to some normalcy of all the programs that are being offered. So I just want to say thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Mr. Pastu, I think you have a comment.
Yeah, if you, I just want to kind of walk through it again. And I think it's very important because certainly, as you kind of are referencing, we got a lot of recreational programs that do, are participated by the public, and so we take this seriously, but we also take seriously maintaining the public health, and so I think Loretta did a nice job with assembling that. So if you're okay with it, I'm going to walk through these bullets real quick because I'm going to talk with City Attorney Buds about putting the next round of COVID-19 resolution for the May 4th meeting. In fact, you can see it. Can you go back just a couple more, Michelle?
You want me in your section or Loretta's section?
Loretta's section, yep.
Okay,
Thanks.
sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
One thing I think I may have left out of the memo that we probably should address too is skate parks. The National Parks and Recreation have a snapshot survey that they've been taking. So those of us that have answered, they give us the results. Skate parks to me are marginal in that the kids are normally farther than 6 feet away because they're doing their maneuvers. However, they can congregate on the top, of the structures, and 74% have closed their skate parks. As I said, we will be taking steps then to do all these things after council gives that direction. Those things are currently open. So skate park would be one more thing that we could think about since we have two.
Well, if I may just, include that as part of going through this, but, the cancellation, the resolution would include the cancellation of summer recreational programs through August 30th. Probably include a review for fall, no later than probably the 1st of July. Cancellation of summer concert series, cancellation of park reservations, all special events through August 30th. Again, a review as to where we think we are from a public health standpoint, probably by the end of June, and then closing of the skate park facilities as well. So unless there's any heartburn comments, I'll ask, to put this together as part of our item for the next COVID-19 series of resolutions.
Your Honor, I got a question.
Councilwoman Vining, you have a question? And then let's see if somebody else did.
Yes, Your Honor. I had a question for Loretta concerning the survey she mentioned. You talked about the skate parks. What did they give a percentage of the community gardens that closed out of that survey?
Interesting. Yes, they do. They didn't name all, but people only closed 32% of the community gardens. So 62% have kept their community garden open so far.
I have been thinking about that and, just watching the news, Your Honor, with all the meat packing plants closing and the uncertainty of the nation's food stability. I don't know if we're that far yet, but I thought we're in a good position being an agricultural county, having so much knowledge in farming and recently, thanks to our several community gardens, and we have a lot of people who know how to grow food, and it could be really part of our food stability in the upcoming future here. And we have the agricultural program at the college. We have lots of farmers in the out county area, and I'm sure in the city as well. So I just feel like it's something that we might have to look deeper into as a county. Just throwing that out there. And of course, we're uncertain about the Selma Rankin Community Garden, although we're a part of a $50,000 grant that Stephanie received over at the Opportunity Center. So I know that we have individual funding, but there's tons of grant funding for community gardening, and maybe just something that we want to take a look at in the future. Of course, water is critical, so I don't know how to do it without water, but I just wanted to make that statement, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Akalanche, I think you had a comment, then I'll go to Councilman Felder.
Thanks, Your Honor. A couple of comments I have. One, it gets back to the water issue about the temporary irrigation. Would we be able, if we have the community garden open, to have the fire department go over there periodically and just wet down the gardens with their pumper truck? The other comments I have regarding number 4 on the bullet says cancel all special events through August 30th. Is that going to include the various fair parades in town, the art fair, various gatherings that they have at the Sawyer House in the summer? And then what about the farmer's market?
Well, I think that, for the parades, yes, I would see that as, we've treated that as a special event here in the city. Regarding the farmer's market, that one is an interesting question. One, it's not part of the ongoing city operation, but it's in some ways not much different than going to the store. I struggle with thinking about farmers markets and how to treat that. The Sawyer House, yes, I think we would have to close that off for that. But the farmers market is an interesting challenge in that I haven't figured out what it is, if it's an event or if it's related to a retail grocery operation. It has a little of both.
Thanks.
I didn't give you an answer though.
No, that's okay. I mean, I kind of agree with you. The farmer's market can be looked at as a kind of a seasonal grocery store, but it has a lot of people that usually come for several hours, and it's pretty crowded.
Yes.
So from what we're going through with COVID-19, even though we don't have any control over it, I think we should have some dialogue with them about how they're going to handle it.
That I agree. Yes, that would make sense. If I could too, on the watering, you know, let us, from a staff standpoint, monitor if it becomes an extended drought period. We'll look to try and come up with some solution to get water to those gardens by whatever means necessary.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think as we move forward and think of some alternatives that might be able to allow those to continue. I think there are many gardens that are essential for some people, and if we can help manage that with them, I think it's as long as the social distancing and those things continue. I think there's some options there. Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor. It is with regards to the food gardens and planting in the community and around people's own homes. It is perhaps worth noting that we are beginning to see some bumps in the food supply chain. I think we're seeing some postings of some fast food establishments saying that certain menu options are not available because of food supply chain issues. It is also worth noting that I think last year we amended our weeds, trees, and refuse ordinance to alleviate restrictions on edible food gardens in the city for residents, so they can plant their own food in their yards to help with that. If they want to have a vegetable garden out back, that's perfectly fine. And in the city ordinance was recently amended to allow that. So just want to let everyone know that and bring some attention to it. You know, certainly nothing like this in mind when we pass that, but isn't it nice how good policy helps later on? So
very good.
Thank you.
Other questions on these items or on the recreation and the parks?
Oh, if we could, I got the last piece to go through here.
Okay.
Well, just a quick update of what we have coming up on the May 4th meeting. Based on the governor's recent executive order, obviously to stay home, stay safe through May 15th. We would probably look to continue the closure through May 18th. Again, I put on, depending on the outcome of the discussion we just completed, we'll incorporate language in the COVID-19 resolution. And then I'll have to ask the city attorney about where we are potentially, because I don't remember any, I can't remember if it was the 14th or 15th is when the video public meeting was still valid. So, but I also put on there just, and I'll let Matt talk about that because I got a little bit at the end for both him and Ed if they want to add something, is, are we ready for a work session? I greatly appreciate letting us at the staff level get caught up on giving you an update on things, but I do also notice that everyone's a little more comfortable with this, a lot more questions, everybody's participating. And so if we're ready to maybe start with doing work sessions, we can go back to programming them, I think, you know, with the 18th, if we're still doing video.
I'm looking at the council. I don't see anybody that's objectionable.
Okay, well, I'll plan on that then to get those reinitiated. The other thing with it is the Saks Furniture demolition. I'll put together some language essentially asking us to participate 50% with the county treasurer in that, and we'll develop probably a letter of understanding with them subject to the city attorney and city manager, community development director's approval. So I really would, as I said, like to move that along quickly. I think we got good bids and it'd be nice to get that building down as soon as possible. And then I got two other items, which is Barry talked a little bit about the wastewater treatment aeration membrane diffuser replacements for there. I've read that already. And that should be Eagle. That's the grant for the water turn-on program that he mentioned. So those are the only 4 items I have. One of the other things is start preparing for city reopening city facilities. I kind of put in there soft opening. We got a lot to do, and I think maybe the first day is just get employees back acclimated a little bit. There's going to be some changes. Jeff alluded to the barriers, but we'll also have a lot of policies, a lot of changes physically to the building, I think, to try and limit the access, for the public. Again, a much smaller footprint allows us easier to sanitize that area for the public as well as employees. I'm looking at closing the third floor to the public. We will still use elements of it for staff for the time being. Again, personal protection equipment for employees. Certainly have a strategy, if you will, for workplace distancing. Everyone has pretty much acknowledged through this process, we've come up with ideas how we can manage distancing for employees. A lot of it with working at home. A couple of folks, Patrick and Ed, seem to have accomplished a lot and have adapted very well to it. Mark sometimes will tell you it's good and bad, but there has been a lot of folks working from home as well. And then certainly we talked about the video bid openings, encouraging utility payments online, use of the Dropbox. I've talked with Peggy Howard regarding doing electronic applications as well as even Zoom type of interviews. It's not uncommon in this world, and these are the kind of technology related tools that we can use certainly during this pandemic, but more than likely will continue beyond. So with that, we do have some upcoming items, and they all are somewhat related. We've got collective bargaining agreements. All 6 expire here June 30th. But related to that, we are going to have to talk about some budget reductions. I did mention during the budget presentation, state revenue sharing reductions are going to be a reality. The magnitude's not known yet at this point. But we also have some COVID-19 related service reductions. Jeff kind of talked a little bit about the building department. Loretta, we're not going to have as much staffing related to summer help. So there are some changes, throughout that we will have to identify. And then clearly, we put that in the context of our council goals and objectives, as well as trying to schedule a discussion regarding the public safety assessment. All of these kind of tie together. They kind of go with a little bit with the collective bargaining, but I do think I am going to have to ask you to consider a closed session to go through that. Probably not the 4th, but maybe the 11th of May, just to walk through that. So we can talk further about it, but I just need to let you know that's all coming up here quickly.
Thank you, Vince. Questions for Mr. Pastu? Andrew.
Thank you, Your Honor. Question about reopening policies. Are we anticipating having all the employees come back at once, or are we anticipating that part of our workforce is going to remain remote for a temporary period of time so that we can ease everyone back in? Not everyone's coming back into the building at once. And then second question, are we doing temperature checks on the way back in? I know a lot of larger businesses are.
We haven't done the temperature checks as part of that, but clearly between now and the 18th, we'll be working on a number of safety policies related to that. I will tell you going forward, I anticipate that we will very much try and encourage employees to work from home where they can. In my case, I can probably do it a couple days a week. I think a lot of the other department heads, but there's also the benefit of having the close face-to-face, although can't get that close, but in-person conversations. I think that's the one thing that we miss in this distancing. But we will have a series of protocols and policies related to, from a safety standpoint, from equipment. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't looked into any further about the temperature testing coming in, but there is some. I think Peggy Howard had actually sent me some information related to the policy from as part of the CARES Act that we need to consider that includes that. So
If I can follow up, Your Honor.
Sure, and then I got a couple more after you.
Okay. Are we making any changes to our use of conference rooms? I anticipate that much of that face-to-face interaction benefit comes from being able to sit down at a meeting with a group of individuals to discuss a given topic, but a conference room almost seems like a precluded setting, given all the recent circumstances, which might diminish any utility that's garnered from on-site work environments.
In the short run, if I may, I do think that the use of our conference rooms will be diminished and actually maybe work areas. We do want to discourage, again, a large group of people assembling together for that. So, much like what Clerk Treasurer Lavoie indicated, using some of the third floor, I may end up having some employees assigned to work at in a conference room.
Just to be able to spread people out more.
Yep, you got it. Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Councilman Elijah, I think you had your hand up. We started.
Thank you, Your Honor. One of the questions I think was partially answered, and that was regarding when the City Hall starts phasing back in, are we going to allow some of the employees that can work remotely in order to decrease the population in City Hall? And then the other question I had was mainly a suggestion for the work session. Is it possible to see not an engineering drawing, but an illustrative drawing of what the phase 1 infrastructure improvements are going to be for Lazy Boy? Because council had probably 4 months ago, maybe, we had a look at some of the initial concepts for how the intersection was going to work and what the improvements were going to look like. And since then, we haven't seen anything, and it is going out for bid. So can we see what is going out for bid?
We do have some conceptual renderings, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Germaini, and then I'll come around.
When City Hall does open to the public, we may want to consider requiring the public to wear face shields as well, or recommending that they do. I just wanted to say that, throw that out there. That's all.
That will be part of what we have to, I'll be honest with you, I'm actually contemplating a receptionist position to guide employee or public to where they need to go, but also to have that available and to encourage that. I'm going to talk, we got a staff meeting tomorrow. We'll talk more about some of these things, and hopefully at our meeting on the 4th, I can just give you a more detailed outline, although that's only a week away, but give you a more detailed outline what we think some of these safety procedures and protocols will be.
Well, if you're going to hand out masks to the public, if we're going to hand them out, then you better start shopping now, because they're hard to find.
That's part of the discussion for tomorrow. Yeah. I know
Okay.
that's a topic on the agenda. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Councilwoman Moore?
Yes, sir. Just a quick question. I know we talked about the shields for all the different departments. Did we say anything about the floor markings for social distancing?
I didn't, but not to be, not that I missed it, but it, I was just thinking, reading through some the voting information that Clerk Treasurer Lavoie indicated for this upcoming election is doing some of that marking. Certainly Bill Greenhall, our building official, identified, some potential, tape that we can use to help with that, maintaining that distance. So that will be part of, our plan from a safety and security standpoint.
Very good. Other council questions? Vince, just a couple of points. I just want to go back on the special events that follows up to the Councilman's inquiry. As we think about those parades, and I think Councilman Elijah just said all those activities, some outreach to our partners that put some of those activities on. I know we have the list. I appreciate that of what the special events were, but I think there's probably more than what might be on there, just because it may not come through on a kind of a internal sheet as much as something we've done in the past. If is going to impact others out externally as well. And my second item on the calendar items, I know we have through the 18th, as we've talked about, or as you're proposing. There's a couple items that still linger on the calendar that I know that you'll be addressing, making sure that that gets out, I guess, council and staff, if they're going to be removed. I noticed that maybe it's already been removed. I just didn't hear the census training on the 11th and 12th. I'm sure that's not happening, but we need to get with them as well if they anticipate they're coming. Just a couple items like that is what I was thinking about.
Yep. Yeah, we'll follow up on those that are out there and communicate certainly the ones that are planned here in May a lot to make sure that they're aware of what action is going to be taken.
Thank you. And I know our boards and commissions have pretty much been put on hold, and we probably have a couple that come up that might have an item when you talk about brownfield or even, I'm not sure what in planning with the planning commission or not, but if the potential is there for a virtual meeting, if necessary, but if not, we can continue as we're doing. I'll see if there's any other final comments from council or questions from Mr. Pastu. Comments at all?
Just, you know, I'm not going to go through a lot of the administrative services other than, you know, as I mentioned, the assessor has been finalizing the settlement agreement with our council. Got the tax roll out, working with the treasurer's office today, and then also they finalized the baseline roll for the Corridor Improvement Authority. Jody with communications, as Mark mentioned, has done a great job keeping you know, the number of informative press releases out there, certainly on the front end, but on the back end, as we start going toward considering reopening, it's going to probably have another flurry as well. Certainly some of the actions tonight. Peggy and I have been in contact on a lot of different things, a lot of it related to safety and policy items during this time. Terry's done a number of projects to help us with technology and continuing going forward. And Annette has been, you know, providing information with downtown businesses regarding different grant loan opportunities for their consideration. But I'm also going to have her do some grant review as well for us based on some of the programs out there as well. So other than that, I know I have, if Ed or Matt have anything to add, you know, feel free.
This is Ed. I don't have much to add. I would just say there was some conversation earlier in the meeting about reimbursing our funds available for reimbursing some of the costs related to this COVID-19 pandemic. And there is some money out there that's directly through FEMA, and that we're still trying to figure out if we're going to be able to utilize that or not. And the state was awarded about $3 billion through the CARES Act, and to date I haven't heard how they're going to distribute that, if at all, to local government. So just kind of monitoring those at this point, and then putting some tools together to estimate our revenues specifically related to revenue sharing and Act 51 funds in the future as we go.
Thank you, Mr. Sell. Mr. Buds.
Yes, Your Honor. Just a couple of brief comments. First, I know Mr. Pastu mentioned earlier about remote meetings. As things stand right now, the executive order relating to public entities conducting meetings remotely like this is set to expire presently on May 12th. I think that we'll see in the coming days probably what will be happening with the stay-at-home order and either its extension or modification or whatever will happen with that from the governor's office and from the state legislature. So for right now, we are on for remote for May 4th. And as it would stand right now, May 18th would be back physically present at City Hall. Obviously, I'll say I expect still some change there, and I would not be surprised to see that extended, just because it would cause for the potential gathering of large numbers of people in a variety of communities. But we'll stay tuned as far as that, and hopefully I'll have more to report as far as that goes at the May 4th meeting. And otherwise, most of my normal work for the city has been continuing on through the various things that you've heard about through others, and obviously the emergency measures and resolutions, those type of things, and dealing with the executive orders. And unless anyone has any questions for me, that's all I have for tonight.
Any questions for Mr. Buds? See no waving, no hands. So I'm looking back to Mr. Pastu. Anything further, any final comments you have for the council?
Other than I greatly appreciate council again taking a few hours here to let us get updated with where we're at, and hopefully we can get things kind of functioning the way they did a little bit before. But you know, I think getting into the work sessions now that we're more comfortable with the way these are working, we can have some semblance of presenting information in a more timely manner to council. So thanks for letting us catch up on things tonight.
Very good. If there's any final comments from council, great to see everybody. Stay safe and stay healthy. And I want to give a little thanks as always to Jake Perry, IT, doing a great job. Keeps us connected in the fashion we need to and have to. And look forward to continue to move forward in our meetings here. No comments? No comments? We'll close the work session. Thank you all. Be safe, be healthy. Appreciate your time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.